I think we have a quorum, and I think we're all here and accounted for. Welcome to the North Penn School District Board of School Directors, the 739th meeting, May 6, 1997, and we should have started at 7:30 p.m. The reason we did not is we were in executive session up until just recently, and I want that so noted, please, Mrs. Hatfield, that this board was an executive session that started at 6 o'clock this evening. And we concluded that meeting at 7:30 this evening. Tonight, we're going to start with a special action agenda, and before doing that, would Mrs. Scher lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have two items for action on the agenda this evening. One is to recommend the approval to submit the Pennsylvania Department of Education Division of School Facilities Section 731 forms for the placement of 1 modular at Inglewood, 2 modulars at Montgomery, 2 modulars at Nash, and 3 modulars at North Wales Elementary School.
So moved.
We have to have an audience of citizens. Mr. Mosey, I know you're so proud of the work that you've done on this project, but you're going to have to wait just a minute. The other business we have, of course, is to recommend the approval for a refund of real estate taxes on the former Dow Tile Company located in Temesson, Hatfield Township, in the amount of $7,995.23, and the Borough of Lansdale in the amount of $9,015.90. Now, we need to take audience of citizens and comments on both of those issues, and wish to do that at this time. Is there anybody that wishes to speak to either of these issues? Pennsylvania Department of Ed report first. Anybody? Again? Anybody on the refund of real estate taxes on the Dow Tile property? Okay, Superintendent, if you'd make the recommendation.
I so move recommendation 2A.
There's a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mosey, a second by everybody to the right. But Mrs. Hatfield, please place John Schilling as a second. Any board questions around? All in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Opposed would say nay. Thank you.
Likewise, I recommend the approval of the real estate tax refunds as presented on 51-97.
So moved.
Motion by Mosey, second by Scher. Questions around on the right?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
This was a property where Hatfield Township on itself came forward to us earlier, and we asked for it to wait until everything was wrapped up and it reached official tax exempt status. This number looks close, but not quite the same. Was this altered at all, Art?
This is off the settlement sheet.
Off the settlement sheet.
It is the exact number, and if you recall, it was a joint purchase between the two municipalities.
Absolutely.
And that is the exact amount.
Fine. Well, I'm just glad that we waited to tie all the pieces together.
And I also need to tell you, Madam President, that we will be coming forward on the 15th because I just received the information today, and they're asking also for a refund on the transfer tax, so that'll be on the 15th of January.
Of course.
Transfer tax is 1%?
The transfer tax is 1%, or a total of $4,300, and it's split between the two municipalities.
Again. Questions still left?
Yes. Have they received tax exempt status yet? Because according to the letters that were attached to the green sheet, they were still applying.
I'm not sure that they did.
Because that's what held us up the last time. They hadn't gotten tax exempt status, and we tabled it because they had received tax exempt status. And the letters we got in our packet said still said they were applying for tax exempt status.
Right.
But the interesting thing was, if you recall, and I recall it vividly, it was held up because we only had Hatfield Township requesting it. Right. And this was in the settlement for this property was actually, when you look at their fiscal year versus our fiscal year, settlement was in 1996. It was on December 30th, 1996. But I have to believe when I received a letter from Mr. Taylor representing the borough that I could not tell you whether they have received tax exempt status, but I know that if we were suggesting back in February that we rebate Hatfield, and now we're receiving the same letter from Lansdale, I think whether they've received future tax exempt status or not, they're looking for the refund here because they are municipalities.
I think the primary concern was that we only had half of that evaluated, and if there were any problems, like perhaps arguments or disputes between Lansdale and Hatfield over what was the prorated share for each of them. But this property has been transferred to the boroughs, though, correct? To the township and the borough?
The borough and the township currently own the property.
They do own it. And I think we all know that basically any of our municipalities' properties become tax exempt. So I don't have any difficulty on that as long as we're resolved with these figures, because it's a given that if they've taken it, they will have tax exempt status.
If you look at Mr. Taylor's letter, and toward the end of his letter, he said Lansdale Borough is in the process of filing a formal application for exemption for this property with Montgomery County Office of Assessment Appeals, which would likely be approved with an effective date not until January 97. So I think they're looking now for the interim to receive the taxes or the refund of the taxes.
Right. This is only going back as far as when they took ownership, I assume. We're not refunding anything that was collected from downtown.
They took ownership, and at settlement on December 30th, 1996,
Okay.
they did in fact pay the taxes.
Okay, any further questions of the board? All in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Opposed would say nay. Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Board of School Directors, May 6, 1997. Our meeting tonight consists of two separate meetings. First, we will conduct a special action meeting to vote on several matters which have been previously discussed, as we did and voted on. The second part of our meeting is the fifth in a series scheduled to review the preliminary budget for 1997-98 fiscal year and is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those claiming to address the board come to the microphone and state their name and address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 5 minutes. This limit will permit time for all those who wish to speak to the board to do so. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, the board president may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker, and this is in reference to Board Policy 8344.2. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Dr. Bose, but before we do, this board has a special announcement that they'd like to make, and that is to inform the media and the public that we do have the budget now at zero. Dr. Bose will give you the details as to how that happened since the last time we were together, but it is no secret that Dr. Bose and his cabinet were given a charge by the Finance Committee of Mrs. Scher and Mr. Mosey and the board officers that we are looking for a zero budget. Keeping in mind and to balance what we wish to do, we still have not addressed the dollars that we wish to place into the budget for purposes of technology, and this is not a final tuning of the budget. In talking with Mrs. Scher, there is a wish on her part and a confidence from finance and among a majority of board members that the possibility of a preliminary adoption of the budget will be next Thursday, the action meeting, that is May 15th, 1997. And at that time, we'll make a preliminary adoption on what we currently have. It is the board's wish to continue to press on, especially the wish of the Finance Department to press on and look for either errors or duplications in the existing budget. We have found some. We will continue to find some. The Cabinet and other members of those involved in the budget have been tightening up their budgets and have found errors in their categories that will be addressed after the preliminary budget is adopted. There are board members that have been going line by line with this budget. Mrs. Scher has been doing a majority of that work. That work has been shared with her by Mr. Mosey, Mrs. Krieger, and myself. And we have decided that that's a piece of homework we wish to do and is necessary in a budget this size. Dr. Bose, if you would elaborate on those reductions that you and the Cabinet have been able to find since the last time we were together.
Certainly would. Thank you for the opportunity. Let me begin with a complete admission that the team that has worked to make this happen and follow the goals and the desire of the board does not jump tall buildings in a single bound, is not faster than a speeding bullet, and cannot see through ordinary objects, but are ordinary people who have simply understood what was expected of them and responded accordingly. Since we last met, where we were at 2.4 mils on the third version of the budget, the work that was presented by Mr. Wood and the work that was a revision of previous work completed by Drs. Hassler and Mangano on staff development and curriculum development, as well as Mr. Wood's presentation at the last budget review session on plant operations and facilities, have brought in a $696,233 reduction over that third draft of the budget, which is equivalent to 2.4 mils. So tonight, before hearing any further reports, we stand at a 1/10 of a mil increase. And as Ms. Mankel said, and I concurred with in previous conversations, we can make that zero. With the understanding that the board has yet to decide to what extent there will be an investment in technology that reflects the emergence of our technology plan, or at least a commitment to the acquisition of certain technology that the school district will need as it charts its course into the future and crosses over into the 21st century. So without any further prologue, let me begin the presentations to the board by pointing us all to the budget development agenda and introducing Dr. Bob Hassler, who will talk about student activities, to be followed by Mr. Weir, talking about community relations and television, Channel 16 programming, as well as technology, which is the one important feature that will perhaps impact the final millage increase. There will be some. If we invest anything in technology above what we now will consider a zero increase budget minus technology. And then finally, the summary and concerns and whatever dialogue that prompts from the members of the Board of School Directors themselves. Dr. Hassler.
Tonight I will review the student activities portion of the budget, which is the 3200s. Student activities cover extracurricular activities of the school program, including athletics, clubs, and various activities. Numbers for this portion of the budget were submitted and developed by many different levels and parties throughout the district. There have been many questions that I needed to follow up on in my learning process in preparation for presentation tonight. In researching the numbers that were submitted, there are a number of changes and corrections that I can report to you tonight that are not yet reflected in the budget that you have before you. As I do this, I will refer to the piece that's in your packet, the selected line items and budget total that has been updated since last Thursday. And also I'll go through the budget, which begins on page 128 and runs through page 132.
Dr. Hassler?
Yes.
Before you go any further, so whatever corrections you make now that result in a reduction reduces the budget as we know it this evening?
That's correct.
So it's
Yes.
further reductions?
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. I'd like to start on page 128, and what you have in the packet is a highlight of some of the areas, but I'd like to walk through the budget from page 128 through 132. If you look at the very first line item, 3200, 130, 32001, extra duty elementary, in my research I found that in past years, if you look back to 94, 95, we had budgeted about $4,800, and that was basically to cover sixth grade programs such as dances, etc. When 6th and 7th grade had intramurals, we had a larger number, 95, 96. In recent years, however, especially this year, I found that no money has been charged to that account. We had budgeted $5,000 and no monies have been charged that account because we have eliminated that and we use chaperones instead. So what I'm recommending is that we eliminate that $5,000 that's in the line item for this year. So that would take that down to zero and a savings of $5,000. The second line item is the large line item. 32002 is the ASN number. It's extra duty secondary, and this covers all clubs at middle and high schools, all coaching positions at the middle and high schools, and it covers about 304 positions in the district. The amount that's proposed in the budget is $675,810, and if you compare that to last year's budget amount of $587,000, you can see that's about a 15% increase, and I'd like to explain that. The contract calls for a 3.7% increase. However, you see a 15% increase from last year to this year. Again, in our research, what we found and how we arrived at this is we took each extra duty position, one by one, all 304, calculated the amount that each person was to be paid, and that came up to about $651,000 rather than the $587,000. So we had a discrepancy as to what our actual amount was for this current year versus what we budgeted. In working with the secondary administration, middle school and high school, and also my secretary, Flo Reed, who's worked with this for a number of years, we feel certain that what happened was that there were some positions that were discussed last year that never made it into the actual budget figure. And not being here, I think they may be some of the 9th grade coaching positions. But we went through it a number of times over and over this year, and we feel we have a solid figure of $675,810, and that covers all areas in the extra duty. So it's a larger increase, and you wouldn't see that increase from year to year. We figure we have a good solid number now, and that will increase whatever the contract calls from year to year.
But the estimated for this year is the 651, 697 that you have.
For 96, 97 plus.
96, 97.
Right.
That is the estimate.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is this both middle school and high school?
Yes.
I'm confused, Madam President. Last year, when we approved the programs in the middle school, I thought that price tag was around $357,000. Did that figure still hold true, or is that?
No,
That was
was the
divided up in
addition.
different expenses.
It increased to the middle school.
That was the addition.
It's not part of this?
What includes it?
Includes it.
It's included in it. So I could take out of the 651, which is the corrected figure, Dr. Hassler, I could take out the 357 and see what we spent in the high school?
Yeah, that would be right.
Sounds, yes.
Or thereabouts.
Well,
Approximately, yes.
what's the matter with Vic?
Well,
You're
some
shaking
of
your
those
head.
expenses weren't specific to extra duty. There were some other transportation, different expenses that were, I thought, calculated into
An extra
that.
duty account?
No, into that 357,000.
Into the reorg.
Into the reorg cost of the co-curricular was more, it was, a good part of it was extra duty pay, but not just this single line item. There were also expenses that would be in other areas of the budget.
Busing and
We
stuff,
had
transportation.
we had uniforms, we had equipment, we had officials.
Okay.
Right.
They're in different line
I
items.
just want
That's
to
all I
make
wanted you
sure
to be
that
clear of.
because
It's not all there.
this 651 is different than the 587, that somewhere in a mix, that 357 we approved last year didn't get botched up as well.
I'd just like to say that that was a very extensive discussion, and we had some very concise budget data in front of us. I don't know how it could have missed the budget. I'd also ask, has this been checked, your estimate of what you expect up against the April monthly summary or the latest financial summary? Because from there, it'll give you an exact reading of what we've spent to date and what our encumbered amounts would be, which should have been, generally, finance should be encumbering this money right from the beginning of the year.
Right.
For the
Yes.
drawdown of the contract.
Yes, we did check that, and at this date, I have one of those figures. We have about $133,000 left, which we know is not enough to cover the total payout at the end of the year.
Spring sports, right?
spring sports, yes. So we are behind,
But that is as of April, correct?
yes.
Okay, my question is that it could go this late until someone realizes, and then also that there wasn't someone coming back to us to let us know, heads up. No, don't take this personally to you, I mean, but.
We're not going to shoot
This
the
is
messenger.
You're talking about basically, originally the budget was showing an $87,000 increase, and now you've just added really almost the same amount of money on top of it. You basically have doubled it from what it was originally budgeted.
And that's why we went through it a number of times to make sure that we didn't make a mistake. So we went through each 304 of the positions and calculated the numbers over and over again to make sure we were right on for next year.
You're saying we only have 132,000 in that account now?
At
Yeah.
this point, yes.
It's gonna run
How short are
short.
we going to be?
Well, sports end in May, don't
Well,
they?
let me answer the question.
How short are we
Well,
going?
according to our calculations of 651,000, you're looking at about $60,000-$70,000.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. Hauser.
Okay. Next line items, 32003 and 32004 are chaperones at elementary and secondary. And just some point of clarification there, that is supervision of any student activity not covered by extra duty contracts, including dances, drama productions, concerts, school programs. It also includes at the middle level, not the main official of any of the sporting activities, but any linesmen, baseline umpires, et cetera, that are our staff that fill those positions. Graphic advisor, next line item, 32005, is a contracted position, and again, just a point of clarification. It's a position that produces copy for all programs and any kind of signage in the building, all in-house printing such as detention cards, attendance slips, detention slips, et cetera. You also see in this line, in this area, the athletic director's salary with an asterisk that is proposing a 2% increase in line with other administrative increases. And the next set of items, the 197s, 3,200, 197, includes late buses, music department trips, athletic trips, and these are salaries for those positions for bus drivers, et cetera. If we can move to page 130, I won't hit every one of the line items, but some of the ones that I feel need explanation. 3,200, 390s cover our officials, and those are PIAA officials at the middle level. PIAA officials at the high school are taken care of through the athletic account. We're on page 130, about midway down the page. A point of clarification, athletic trainers for each of the middle schools are not an actual athletic trainer. That is the school nurse who covers that program. I need to study this a bit further. At this point, again, we haven't charged any dollars to this account this year. The dollars are being charged to this chaperone account. But I have to make sure.
Wait a minute, Dr.
Yes.
Hassler, it says that you're charging to this account. It
Well-
says you budgeted $6,000, and it says you're going to spend $6,000.
This is a part of the discrepancies I have. There are numbers showing up here, estimations, that are saying we've expended money when we have no legitimate reason to be declaring it, which means our fund balance could actually be higher than what we're projecting here in this whole budget.
From my understanding, it's the estimation of what we would spend this year, but as I get the printouts, I see nothing charged there.
And then there should be reasons to say.
It may be being charged to the wrong account, is what may be happening.
This was an issue that came up at last year's budget. Because this had, as you can see, the year before had zeros, and the athletic director, not the athletic director, the athletic trainer at the high school, we went from the 95-96 year to basically having that contracted. You'll find it up at a higher, in another area. It was a different line item number where it was originally charged
Yes, it was
to.
eliminated.
For $6,950. So we went from paying $6,950 for a contracted athletic trainer to this, to the proposed athletic trainer situation where he actually became an employee and increased the cost to $25,000. And when Dr. Bond recommended that, I asked, well, then why have we also, in another layer of expenditure, moved to the $6,000 per middle school? If we're taking someone on full-time, and we've all basically tripled the cost at that level, why would we then still suddenly have to bring someone on at the middle schools when it never existed? And
We
he said that he
actually-
didn't put the money in the budget.
We
He said he
actually-
had no idea why it was there.
If you look at the cost for trainers at the 3 middle schools, you'll find that they're Mrs. Clark's nurses or the people that are in attendance at games.
Correct.
And if you look at 95, 96 actual, that was prior to reorganization and having a full-blown sports program at those 3 buildings. So what Mr. Kelly did, he put $6,000 at each building to cover staff nurses or school nurses that would be in attendance at those activities at the 3 middle schools. There's no other way, quite frankly, other than to use the object or the code athletic trainer, but it's actually for your nurses to be in attendance.
Okay, but may I interject something here? Because back in 94, 95, those amounts indicate to me that the individuals who were being paid those dollars were probably our staff nurses. But what Mr. Kelly did in his wise doings is he put in what we would pay for the certified nurses, because this represents pretty close to what we pay our current employees who do extra duty pay.
Going back to 94,
And there's no
95,
reason, Mr. Wood, or Dr. Bose, or Dr. Hassler, for only the certified nurses to be attending those
We
games.
very seldom, it's very difficult, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Clark, to get certified nurses. We usually wind up with staff nurses, and quite frankly,
Then you
we
don't-
wind up with nurses that are outside of
Okay,
our
we need to cut that
employment
budget then.
on a typical day.
Mrs. Krieger, one of the things mentioned to me by the staff nurses that I met with over the weekend is that they take those jobs to make up for the fact that they're
Sure.
paid so poorly.
Well,
And they need that extra money, that's why they take those jobs as opposed to certified nurses.
yes, but is it right that we pay them at the same rate of pay that we pay our contracted employees?
It's certainly something we should review, because
Right.
we have no obligation to do that.
Right.
Why we adopted that practice is maybe it's a matter of history, and history doesn't have to repeat itself. There's no reason why we shouldn't take a fresh look at who provides those services. Why do we even assume they have to be employees? Perhaps it could be a local emergency medical team, and their contract, we negotiate with them to provide the same services as well as have an emergency vehicle present. I'm simply saying that the past doesn't have to be prologue to what we do in the future, especially when there's no contractual obligation to repeat the same practice.
Dr. Bose, do we? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay. All right, when you responded about the middle schools because of the reorg, the fact of the matter is, we had a full-fledged program at Penndale, and there was still no dollars there. We had 7 and 8, and then we had 9th grade, but basically, we took the programs that were happening at Penfield and Pembroke and took them to Penndale. We took the Penndale programs and put them at Penfield and Pembroke. To go from actually having nothing budgeted to the levels of $6,000 per building is a major jump, and perhaps these dollars were somewhere else in the budget, and perhaps since Dr. Hassler is not finding any drawdown on this account, this may be a redundant spending entry. In other words, perhaps if the dollars are under the nurses and it was credited there and then it's also here, it may be a redundant spending item, and we should.
It's my
look at
belief
that.
they're being charged to the chaperone account at this point.
They were never under the nursing category, at least not in the 7 years that I've been.
Okay, well, it's clear,
Okay, we need to
we're
look at
going
the
around on
spending level.
$6,000. It's clear that this has to be fixed. Dr. Hassler is to redline those 3 areas.
Well, then perhaps the chaperone account should be straightened out as well, then.
Right. We need to check both
No,
of them.
because
They need to be
if he was
cross-compared.
charging to chaperone account, then there's too much money in there then.
Or not
Just
enough.
take a look at the
All right.
whole thing.
Am I wrong? I mean,
Or not enough.
or not enough.
Well,
Do we
haven't-
agree to send Dr. Hassler back to
Please.
find that out?
Review those two.
Thank you.
I think, please, the question is clear. We have a count that was about $1,600 that has become $43,000. That's the issue.
Right.
Altogether, when you
Right.
take the new entries.
But Vicki,
And I
what
think
I'm
we
saying-
need to see what justifies
But
that.
what I'm saying is that if they've been drawing it out of the chaperone account, then perhaps maybe that's inflated or maybe short too.
One of the accounts is wrong, and Dr. Hassler is going to
Well,
find
quite
it.
possibly both of them could be wrong.
Okay.
I had another question.
Wait a minute, I'm not even...
Well, I don't even think
Doctor-
he's done with his
No, he's still-
presentation yet.
Yeah, you know what, everyone's anxious because everybody's finding things, and this is indicative of boards going line to line with a very big budget. And so it's a good sign, and yet it seems to be a bit freewheeling. But let's let Dr. Hassler finish his entire report, and we'll do this systematically, side to side, start marking up your questions, each board member will get their turn. But let's let Dr. Hassler finish. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, let me move down to the bottom of that page, 130, and the ASN number of 32402, repair of athletic equipment. Again, just a point of clarification of what that includes. It includes the reconditioning and repair of football equipment, including check and a certification for safety of helmets, shoulder pads, etc. Helmets need to be certified every year that they fall within safety regulations. It also includes the repair of any athletic equipment, including such things as goal posts, backboards, netting, any equipment that goes with that. If we move to the next page, 131, again, although there's not any major increases in the area of conferences, I'd like to note that these include things such as the following: music trips and competitions, club trips, the cost of academic competitions, the cost of coaches that accompany these trips, including registration, food, and lodging. If we could then move to page 131 and 132, where it starts with supplies on the very bottom of the page, and we flip to 132 and look at the top. Here is where we had come across a typo that will save us a significant amount. Supplies Pendale is indicated at $78,000, and the real line item there is $28,000.
I had a big question mark there.
So that's $50,000?
$50,000, yes. And as we went back and looked at the sheets that were submitted, the two really did look like a 7, and that's why it wasn't picked up until we started to
So
explore.
we just saved $50,000 and nobody got hurt.
All of
Right.
the typographical errors.
We're on a roll. Keep going.
I think that's the end so far for this. If we move on to new equipment and replacement equipment, that was part of the per pupil allocation that we gave each building that I addressed the first night of budgeting, where we gave each building an allocation, and they had the choice to spend it amongst different accounts. And one final area, student activities. Again, just a point of clarification, what that includes is such things as the National Math League, Philadelphia Classical Society, Montgomery County Social Studies Consortium, Columbia Scholastic Press Association, etc. As I total this up with those corrections, the total student activities account corrected as of tonight then would be $1,454,776, which is an overall increase of 4.2% from last year's budget. And again, I'd point out that that includes that 15% increase in the extra duty pay. So in most cases, there was a decrease in a number of the accounts.
Okay. Anything else, Dr. Hassler?
No.
Okay, board questions to the right, Mr. Schilling.
What 4.2%? What area do you feel is increased the most? I mean, is it you think it's because of extra duty correction, or?
Yeah, the extra duty one, the extra duty area, 15% increase is the one that went up the most. And the areas that went down the most are middle level supplies that dropped a significant amount, again because of the reorganization last year.
Okay.
It should be noted that on the extra duty, it was mentioned that the increase to the association is 3.7. That is indicative of the 5th year of the existing contract. That when we opened up the last year, it was for salary only. It did not affect the other areas. So the other areas are pretty much status quo. Mr. Jordan's shaking his head yes. We're in agreement. So that 3.7 was decided by a previous board, not by the majority of this existing board. So we're still required under past and current contract to accept that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Krieger.
You don't have anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Schilling.
Okay, first of all, Dr. Hassler, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to meet with me. I don't know if Mr. Allen had a chance to come in and talk to you
Yes.
about this particular budget. I'm sure he did. And I thank you for answering some of those preliminary questions here tonight that I proposed to you the day that I met with you. However, I still have some more. First of all, I guess I need to tell the board that I am still having major concerns with the amount of money that we are paying out in extra duty compensation salaries. As the board knows, and most people who attend our board meetings, I'm the only board member who continuously votes no on extra duty pay, and this is probably precisely one of the very reasons why I have. It's never been clear to me on the actual number of positions, the actual number of people who hold those positions, the actual number of total dollars that people in these positions make over and above their regular salaries. And quite frankly, I believe that the Employees Association has been granted a monopoly on the positions that we do offer here for our students in the way of extracurricular. I think, and it has been recommended to us, it has been stated to us many times before, that the administration could surely come forward with a presentation to the board in regards to these positions and the very issues that I've delineated thus far. But I really think it's imperative that we take the means to do that and to begin that process now. I'm not interested in opening up a Pandora's box. I don't think we have to go back to the beginning and start all over again. I think with the initial changes that we've made in many of our coaching positions since this new board majority took office, we've already made our positions known with those hirings, and quite frankly, I'm happy with the selections that we've made. However, in light of the fact that we do have at least one employee in the professional ranks who takes home approximately $16,992 in extra duty pay a year, and he has 5 different positions, I think it is incumbent upon the board to take a look at implementing a way that we can offer up to members of our community the opportunities to get involved and maybe to capitalize on the recent summit on volunteerism. But when you have a monopoly, not very many people are granted the opportunity to do that. I would like the budget to reflect us doing that, and I think if you grant a total of $675,810 for next year, you're only going to delay that process. Yes, I know it's just a matter of approval of salaries, but in saying what I've said, I did call Solicitor Bartle today and asked him to clarify for me if the district, in fact, was legally obligated to only offer these positions to our professional employees. The state code, Mr. Bartle told me this evening just before he left, the state code says that we may employ the employees, we may appoint the employees. It does not say that we must only appoint the employees. So Mr. Bartle said if this is something that the board seeks consensus on and obtains consensus on, that he will look further into that to see what we can do to open up this process and hopefully reduce the amount of extra duty salaries that we pay out in the coming years. The chaperoning, I understand we're obligated to the previous contract for the next year, but then after that it will take on the items that we're just negotiating. The terms of the new contract.
Right.
Okay. Dr. Hassler, who is the student activities treasurer for the board, please?
I don't know the actual name of who the student activities treasurer is. It's again a contracted position. I'm sorry,
Mr. Janaszek.
Okay.
It is an extra duty position.
It's an extra duty position.
It's actually in the contract. It's listed in the contract, and it calls for a certain increase each year of the contract.
Okay.
Gonzalez actually does the printout of the student activities fund.
Who does, Vicki?
The Gonzalez.
Well, that's what I thought. I
But
mean,
the
that was-
information that goes on and the liability and responsibility of that position, which involves all the collection of gate receipts, the coordination of that, the hiring of ticket takers and ticket sellers, and bringing that money, I mean, you're charged with quite a responsibility. It does ultimately come back to the business office, but there's an awful lot of coordination that takes place in the high school. I mean, this goes on all year. This is quite a task.
It's a position within the contract that's beyond discussion.
Okay, well, then we'll move along.
Is he bonded?
Yes, he is.
He's bonded.
But we do have an athletic trainer at the high school, correct, Dr. Hassler?
Correct.
Okay, and it's been clarified that next year his total salary outcome will not exceed $25,000.
Correct. The hours are adjusted.
Is this person splitting duty between this and security?
No, ma'am.
That's what Juan wanted.
No?
I thought when Mr. Braun brought that, Dr. Braun brought that
Yeah.
forward, that was going to be.
That's how we were
He
sold.
wanted him for the parking lot
told.
security.
Right.
That was
Remember the fee?
I believe that was contingent upon a parking lot fee,
Right.
but he is not involved. I mean, he has a full-time job being the athletic trainer.
Okay. Okay. I've already stated what I wanted to about the athletic training pay. I believe that, Art, do you intend to put out the repair for athletic equipment out for bid again?
We always do.
Okay. And that will be coming before the board again?
That will come before the board.
Okay. Dr. Hassler, in regards to conferences, page 131. Where did you say that we take out our fees for the league fees, PIAA league fees?
The PIAA league fees probably at the high school would come out of the athletic budget.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm a little at a loss here at the financial disparity between what we're paying for conferences at the senior high level and Penndale, Penfield, and Pembroke. I understand that Brook and Field are smaller schools. Are these factored on a per student amount, or how is that
At the middle school,
divvied up?
at the middle school, they basically work together as administration to come up with that amount. The high school just includes many more activities that students are involved in that are going out of the district than at our, excuse me, at the middle level.
Okay, but what kind of costs are the coaches incurring?
It would be the
Delineated
it would be
here.
the cost of accompanying the students on the trip. That would be all.
But they're getting paid extra duty for that.
Well, if there's registration, if there's lodging, et cetera. No, these would be people who would be accompanying on the trip for registration, food costs, lodging, et cetera. It's not a pay.
It's extra chaperoning pay then? Is that what you mean?
No, it's
Some
No,
expenses.
no, expenses.
It's their conference
It's expenses.
expenses, food, lodging, meals.
It's not a salary account.
It's not a salary account. It's expensive. It's expense account.
Well, I'd like to see that reduced. I think it's too high at the high school level, quite frankly. Either that or you can, I just think it's ridiculous. I think it's a ridiculous fee, $33,000 a year for conferences and expenses. I just have a major problem with that.
And just a clarification again, it's not conferences for teachers, it's mostly for students. Like the trip, the decathlon, the academic
but so many
decathlon team would all be
championships.
charged there.
I do believe PIAA is in there, actually.
Well,
I do.
PIAA trips, et cetera, would be included in there. If our students go to the state track final, et cetera, I think.
Dr. Hassler,
I'll
as a follow-up, if you
delineate
give
that,
some
sure.
examples and put that out in memo form to
Sure.
the board as to examples of that category, and so that's not confused with adult conferences.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tuition, too.
along with the examples, too.
Well, let me ask
Get a
you-
total
I'm
number
not-
of trips that we
Yeah,
take,
sure.
so I can get
Right.
an
Yeah.
cost.
Right.
And then, we get, every month, we get a report on student travel.
That's all that.
And time after time, it says, no cost to the district, no extra cost to the district, when we all know it's a cost to the district. So I'd like to make a suggestion that from now on, or from this point forward, when we bring forward student travel, that we have whatever amount it's costing from the budget in substitute pay, whatever goes into, the cost, and then when these individuals come back and submit their expense reports, I'd like something subsequent to that. Because we get those expenditure sheets with thousands and thousands of checks that are cut to reimburse people for stuff, and really, it's impossible to track the money. It is impossible to take those expenditures and track it back to the budget every year. And we may be at a zero now, Mrs. Mengel. Quite frankly, I think we're heading for a tax break, maybe for the first time in the history of this district. And, I don't want us to get complacent now and think that we're at a zero, that we don't have to go any further to try to reduce this budget.
We got to find technology dollars now.
That's my mission, okay, is that. So
Okay.
I just want everybody to be cognizant. I'm not here trying to cut programs. I'm trying to look for slush money and to redirect it where it needs to go in the future, in a better form of priority.
Or at least put it in the proper accounts anyway.
Right, at least put it where it belongs. Other than that, Dr. Hassler, you answered all my questions, and I thank you very much.
Mrs. Sharp, thank you, Dr.
Yes, you touched on a number of mine. Basically, for those who didn't keep up with the math,
You have to speak up, Mrs. Sharp.
I just don't have a microphone. Approximately, you articulated approximately $102,000 decrease in the budget document that we have here.
Wait a minute, can you say that again, Vicki? Because I got like every other word, because you were moving
It was
stuff in.
approximately $102,000.
Okay.
2,200 is what I have here as a reduction from the budget item. I didn't quite hear all that as you listed them, but that would be the difference. And what I'd like to say is in this, as far as the extra duty, I can appreciate the spirit of what you're saying. I know it's been an issue for many years as far as the level of extra duty pay. However, that is driven by the contract, and essentially, if you're choosing those employees, you either pay it or you cut the program. In other words, no band or no football coach or no basketball coach. But Sharice,
I'm sorry.
on the full listing that you mentioned, you said that we have not. Approximately a month and a half ago, we received a full, at my request, Dr. Bose passed those 304 positions to us, a full and complete listing each and every position and the amount of salary and
But on
pay.
that list, it doesn't give us how many of those employees. Did you know that this one individual had that many?
Yeah, I could
positions?
figure it out.
Okay, well,
His
then-
name's listed in 5 different places.
Okay.
But okay.
But
Nonetheless, okay.
unless you took the time to do that.
Lady.
I'm just helping to facilitate
Bring
because
this back in.
I wanted to ask if that would help so that we could get a focus on how many of the categories you would like to see considered for outsourcing. There are some that I would think that you would realize if you don't
I
have
think we go through the whole thing until we've done the whole thing. The
outsourcing.
whole program, everything. I mean, quite frankly, I'm not thrilled that we pay a teacher to have Nintendo at the high school. I'm not thrilled that we pay an advisor to do a sewing club.
You're talking sports as well as clubs, or these are clubs that you're naming?
Yeah, I'm talking about opening it up and giving the community an opportunity to apply for those positions.
At a different rate of pay, correct?
If we're entitled to do that, we may be obligated under the school code and the contract to have to pay the same salaries. And I just, I think that a lot of the individuals who opt for extra duty do it as a way to subsidize their very good pay, and basically monopolizing monies that maybe more professional or experienced people could apply for.
Okay, then we're not
Dr. Miller, can
necessarily
you,
lower down. Wait,
ladies, just a minute. Dr. Miller, would you provide a list to this board on how many extra duty assignments do in fact go to employees, and how many of those assignments are to those outside the employment here?
We have them.
I know there's not many, and what I hear from Mrs. Krieger is she'd like to see that increased and put up for more competition, but I want to know the breakdown between employees covering extra duty and outsiders covering extra duty.
There's nothing unhealthy with competition, okay?
Of course not.
That's fine, but really then, if we're dealing with perhaps the same level of dollars, we're not talking a budget issue, then you're talking more of a quality issue.
I don't know what you're doing.
Well, Frank wasn't sure about that, though, Vicki. He wasn't sure about that.
That's all right, I was just looking
He
for
said
your
he had to
focus
see the
as it relates to the budget. Thank you very much, and when we are completed with this portion of the budget, or actually our review of the budget and move into technology, then I'd like to have an opportunity to say a few things. I pass for now.
Mr. Hill.
No questions.
Mr. White.
Only one, on page, I changed the page. On page 128, there are 3 items there for late buses for the middle schools. Is there an account for late buses for the high school?
My understanding is no.
And the reason I even bring up the topic again, of course, is next year with our parking dilemma that we will have to solve, and the fact that we will more than likely want to utilize buses in some way so that students will be able to take part in extracurricular activities. Should we look at that issue as something that we may want to budget for?
It's already budgeted in the transportation budget. We have put the high school late runs in the transportation budget.
You
Let's get into a very late debate. Why wouldn't it be in this category with the other late buses
I can't
for the
take
middle school?
ownership for the development of this budget.
Oh,
I'm saying, when we saw that it wasn't here, John and I arbitrarily placed it. We know we're going to need more buses than we've ever needed before the high school level.
We discussed that the other night during transportation, which was the only reason that my question comes up here. 3 obvious line items for late buses for middle schools, no obvious line item for late buses for the high school, knowing that we will need many of them in the coming year.
And I can't promise you, even though we show estimated expenditures of $9,000, but I will try to deal with that prior to the publishing of the next budget, that we've even charged the middle school buses to that category.
So there could be a duplication there, and you're going to double check that. Mr. Wood is not responsible for the formation of this budget, but we're certainly glad he's here to help correct it
It was
as we
only
find
the
it.
issue of the obvious and something
Perhaps we could
obviously
correct that.
missing in this particular section.
Maybe you could correct that in the final budget. Move it there.
Any other questions?
And the only other comment I wanted to make was one that Mrs. Krieger made about when recommendations are made for travel. I know for a fact that my predecessor on the board in 1991 assured that every time there were charges to the district, that they would show up for travel. And when there are no charges, there are no charges, and when there are, they do appear.
Mr. Allen?
The budget as recommended, I assume, since I heard nothing to the contrary, assumes no changes to the extracurricular program as far as number of activities and number of students available or that can participate?
Correct.
Okay. The second thing is, I would think that to make the accusation that teachers only do this for the money is a statement made by somebody that has not witnessed numerous practices, has ever bothered to calculate the hourly rate that they get paid, which is tremendously low. And I think that's an unfair statement to make, and I will defend the teachers for the passion for which they coach, they teach, they run activities. It's not for the money. It's for the love of the activity and the wanting to help the kids. Thank you.
Mr. Mosey?
Can I respond?
Just a couple questions. The 675,810 that you're projecting for extra duty to secondary level, that's driven by the contract, isn't it?
The increases, yes.
Yeah, we can't change
The
that.
old contract,
The old
the fifth year.
Right. And I need a further clarification on this athletic trainer, 32017, 6950. That was page 128. We budgeted 6950 in 95-96. And I see we moved to another account, 32022, where we're budgeting $25,000. Can anyone explain that to me?
That's what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, I'm still not clear on that. How we
Dr.
went
Hester,
from
do you have that?
69 to 25,000.
One was contracted and then they brought him on full-time. He wasn't
The
here.
6,900 was contracted, and then we decided to hire him full-time and pay him 25,000.
But that's where we got the security story. This
Yeah.
came in last year's budget.
Right.
We were told that he'd be half-day trainer, half-day security.
So he's a full-day trainer, 25,000, he never,
And he did not participate, Mr. Wood, to the
Does
best of your
anyone know?
knowledge, he has not
Does anyone
participated in the
know?
security department?
I think in all fairness, you need to go back to page 130, and you need to look at actual for 94, 95, 96, and see that we did in fact have a full-time trainer.
where are you at?
Where?
I'm on page 130.
Yeah.
Athletic trainer, high school, 32,303. 23,275, 20,000. The difference is, it used to be contracted through a sports medicine group. And then we brought the person on our payroll. And I can't explain, quite frankly, the difference why, actually, what you're seeing, and this is interesting, you're seeing in year 95, 96, you're seeing the 20,000, the 32,303, and you're seeing 69,50
In the same year.
in the 32,017. So it may be that that particular year, because of special needs, the person was paid $26,950. But we have had a trainer. I mean, we can't run a program, quite frankly, of that size without a trainer.
Well, the trainers now are
It's
employee
not-
as
it's not-
opposed to
it's
the
not-
past,
He's
they were
now
subcontracted.
our employee as opposed to a contracted service,
And he's salaried, he's not hourly.
and he's salaried. And that job, as you know, can go many, many hours. I mean, you know,
Right.
on a Saturday, when he's preparing for many, many sports, he starts early in the morning, he may be taping for soccer, then he tapes for hockey, then he may tape for football and travel with the team to a Saturday afternoon game. I mean, his day on a Saturday can be, quite frankly, till he deals with his injuries when he gets back from an away game, he can be at 7 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. The person is not selfish with his time. Quite frankly, we can be happy to have him as a salaried person and not an hourly person with overtime.
So to get back to my question, you're saying that the 32017 and 32303 could quite possibly add those two figures together, and that would total the salary.
That's correct.
Can you verify that? Anyway.
I can tomorrow. I mean, with the changes that we've made in the budget over the years, moving from category to category, it's so hard to follow. You know, and I apologize for that, and we're hoping that, I mean, we talked about postage the other night. One year we have it one way, the next year it's another way, following year it's a different way. I mean, we have to get some consistency, and this is a case that I can't explain to you, but I can tell you that at the high school level, we paid a trainer in year 94, 95, 95, 96, and I can't imagine why we don't have a 96, 97 an amount of budgeted on line
Well, that's
item
what-
32,303.
That's what jumped out at, and 32017 either.
Right.
That's what jumped out at.
Exactly. Unless it's in another category.
All right, just to follow this up, and I'll be finished. With the high school trainer, we budgeted $25,000 last year, we're budgeting $25,000 this year. As a salaried employee, why did we pay him $26,034?
I can't even explain that. I can't tell you whether or not
Bob can.
he came down and worked with the, and when you look at 32,017, There's no designation about a school. And he may have been down working with ninth grade at that point. If you look at that year, we had just the ninth grade football team, and we did not have football in the other two buildings.
But I guess where I'm getting confused, Art, is if it's a salaried position, to me, you have that duty of athletic trainer, what building you're in or where you're at, your salary's $25,000.
And I'm not
I mean,
able to-
salary position to me is that's what you get paid a year, no matter how many hours you work or what you do. Am I wrong?
I can certainly look tomorrow at his W-2
Right.
for that year and tell you, this may have been an
I don't
outside...
have a problem
Oh, I
with the
know.
salaries. I
Do you have
just
an
want to know why there's... why
Mr.
they're not
Mosey,
there.
Dr. Hassel.
I had talked to the athletic director, from my understanding, and that there was some extra dollars paid because of extra hours put in, but that his hours from now on will be adjusted so that if he puts in 12 hours one day, he will come in a little bit later the next day unless there's an activity. I don't know either why, if it was a salaried position, there were extra dollars paid, unless he was helping out at the junior high level. I can find that out, though.
Well, somebody made that unilateral decision, and it wasn't theirs to make.
Right.
And if it was Doc Ryan's, it needs to go back to him, that that's not his decision to make. He does not exceed the budget on a salary that is set by
Yeah,
this
I mean, why are
board.
we paying overtime to a set salaried employee? That's the question, if it was overtime. And one final question, item number 32704, replacement equipment music, $7,000. What is that?
I believe that was a number of snare drums for the high school.
That's right. 5 snare drums, you told me.
Yes.
That's
Three
all I
or
have.
five.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Any of your kids responsible, Mr. Ryan?
No.
Okay, just checking.
Good report, Dr. Hassler, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Hassler, total 800 other objects. Can you give us a breakout of what the other objects would be at a later date in memo?
Sure.
Not for tonight? Page 132, right before the totals on the 3,200 category is other objects. Just want to know what for $4,800 is an other object.
Sure.
And,
big
okay, the other question. Physician home games, we're using who? Physician home games, we're using who?
Using Dr. Gottschall.
I think that fee is cheap. $1,400? That's cheap.
In fact,
Services are not cheap, and this is a premier doctor in the area, so I'm very impressed with that
Art,
fee.
isn't it true that he gives the money to the athletic department?
Yeah, we weren't to talk about that, but
It's now on the record.
he deposited his proceeds in a special account for special braces and orthopedic type things that young people need.
That means you get a special letter.
Maybe we ought to pay him more.
You gonna suggest a line item that's gonna come out?
Get more equipment.
Okay,
That's
I
commendable.
apologize if I broke a confidence.
That's
It's the kind
commendable.
of thing people should know.
That's commendable, yes.
okay, planetarium trips and outdoor trips, they're related to transportation as opposed to anything else. Is that correct? Okay. Graphic advisor, again, I'm curious that okay, is the graphic advisor, is that a position set by the contract also?
Yes.
Okay, and this person advises us on what again? I know that was early on in the meeting.
Copying, printing.
All copying for the internal copying, such as passes, et cetera. Graphic artists.
He does our layout and does much of the printing right in the graphic arts.
The high school.
That makes more
The high
sense.
school,
That
yes.
explains that.
Exactly.
All righty, very good. Okay, Dr. Hassler, thank you, and the time spent with Mrs. Krieger and Mr. Allen on that area was
Mrs.
appreciated.
Mango, before we move on, I just think I need to clarify for Mr. Allen the point I was trying to make. And it was not about our employees subsidizing their income. It was about the monopoly that our employees have on all of these positions. And I would like to open it up to healthy competition in the future. And I'm fully aware what goes into coaching. I have a husband who I don't see during basketball season or softball season, and I fully understand about the hours, dedication, and commitment that goes into coaching students. Thank you. And he does it for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's your turn. This category of the budget, Mrs. Clark.
Karen Clark, Montgomery Township. Dr. Hassler on page 131, where you're talking about the conferences at the high school. Does that include things like the trip to Utah that was $5,000?
Yes.
And they went to Erie before that, and everybody else who went all those places. So $33,000. If one trip was $5,000, just for Utah, $33,000 doesn't sound like a whole lot of money to me. Thank you.
We have a lot of championships. Anybody else, please? Yes, sir.
Jerry Vigilante, Hatfield Township. Could someone explain to me, please, the chaperone's position and the money paid? Is that money paid to them, like a salary for going on a trip, or?
It's a per activity fee that they're paid. I believe it's $52, and that would be, for example, for evening programs that are run in the district. A lot of them are also run at the elementary schools.
Like a dance?
Yes.
Book fair?
So that would be a parent who comes out?
No.
No.
Teachers.
Teachers.
Okay. And we eliminated that at the elementary level.
No. No. What was eliminated at the elementary level was the extra duty.
Which was switched over to chaperones.
Correct.
So that,
Well, I don't know if it was actually switched. I don't know if it was actually switched over. At one time when 6 and 7, at one time when grades 6 and 7 were together, from my understanding, that's when we had the extra duty at the elementary level. We always had chaperones, a chaperone fee at the elementary level in addition.
do we not have parents who volunteer to do these things? But we still need to pay?
Yeah, there's a number of parents there. And as Mrs. Krieger said, that not beginning next year, but the following year with the new contract, that will be reduced based on the new contract stipulations.
Is there a lack of volunteers for this? Is that why we have to pay?
No.
Sometimes there are.
Sometimes, but there may be, but I think also...
If chaperones are needed and we can't get enough, then certainly we have to pay someone to do that. I can understand that, but just the word chaperone...
They're never advertised for the public to know.
I think there's also a need or a desire to have a certified teacher there to also accompany the program.
There's a liability in the absence of a certified public school employee on site and supervisor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. O'Donnell.
First, I'd just like to make a comment that's kind of rhetorical. I just wish some of the items on the budget would be labeled in the conferences area, that would be labeled travel for conferences, rather than saying conferences. This kind of discussion shouldn't go on asking what's included in that category. How are these sheets prepared? Are these on a database, or are these on the system? Is this information on an Excel spreadsheet, or is it on some type of computer system that's downloaded for here? How do we know that there's not any adding mistakes?
Well, because our staff preparation, I can't assure you that having, this was not my responsibility, unfortunately, or not unfortunately, I guess it is now. But when we do a preliminary or final, we will actually go through and confirm all of them.
Well, the reason why I ask, I went through the budget, every item. I spent quite a few hours going over it, and I saw duplicate pages without detail further on back. I think I pointed out to a couple of the board members, one page was duplicated back here, and that's where I made my first mistake. And I went back and I spotted the number. So that just made me raise the question, could mistakes be made? If it's in a database, in an Excel spreadsheet, you wouldn't catch it. Otherwise, there could be errors in here.
There are errors. One of the things that we will do prior to final adoption is each staff member that has major responsibilities for budget categories, and we all do, some more than others. Mrs. Clark and Mrs. Miller, unfortunately, have an awesome task in this budget. We will ask them to verify their pages and their numbers before we bring forth a budget to the board for final adoption.
Do we have a system that can eventually download the information? Most systems can download the information. I know you're new at the job, but
I'm old enough at the job to know that our system will bring us into the 70s, and that's why we're talking with the board about it.
I know. Okay. Hopefully you'll have a system you can download to a database.
Once we have a new system, I mean, there'll be less manual work.
Okay. On the subject of late buses, in 1994, we spent $15,570. In 1996, we only spent $433 more, $16,003. Now we went to $27,000. I didn't quite hear the explanation why we're going from $16,000 to $27,000.
I would go back and tell you that, quite frankly, I think if I had my druthers, I would take all the money out of the late buses in this category and put them in our regular busing account. It's so hard, and people are not charging to the right account, and I'll tell you why that can happen. We can be making a run and bringing a team back from the Central Bucks Middle School, dropping the youngsters at Penndale that just participated in a game, and we may send that bus to Pembroke to pick up for a late run or an activity run. So it's a case, they're not leaving the compound and going to Pembroke. They're on their back from way back from a sports run, and then they're going down to Pembroke. It's so hard to charge that accordingly.
Do they fill out some type of trip sheet so you know where they're going?
Sure, they get trip sheets.
So somebody doing payroll each week in a good cost accounting system would know exactly how to charge it?
But once again, that's a difficult manual payroll. And you're splitting hairs.
I'm an expert at payroll systems, I know.
understand that. And what I'm saying to you is, at the bus garage, we would show that probably as an activity run, a person leaving at 2:15 and returning at 5:15, instead of charging it individually to the activity.
Okay, so what we're really saying is we're going from 16 to 27, and these are all just have been mistakes.
They could be, I mean, it's a way that we've developed a budget. I don't have a comfort level with it. I mean, if you look at actual, we always look at actual. You look at actual late buses, now I know that was before we initiated the overall program, but I guess Penndale would be a good example. Penndale, we had an activity program that required late buses, and if you go back to 95, 96, you see that we've expended $6,342.86. We're showing an estimate. One of the things that we have to do in this budget is we're going to have to take all of our budget runs, and as we do a final budget, we need to massage the estimates. These estimates throughout this budget, unfortunately, have just been projected across at the budgeted amount.
I can see that.
And that's, that's there's no accuracy in that.
I can see that hopefully somewhere there's a corresponding reduction of the difference between 16 and 27 of the $11,000. I'd like to think.
Yes.
All right, enough on that.
If I can, Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
you brought up the question. Maybe it's because this is the first full year we're implementing the athletic programs, right? So wouldn't that cause the late buses to increase from
Sure it would.
6 to 9?
Sure it would.
You know, I'm a little confused about that, because as long as my children have been at Pembroke, there's always been an athletic program. She's been there 2 years.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
she's
we're having
lucky she
more
got
children,
caught up in
remember?
a reorg and she didn't miss a step.
Although
Had
it's,
we not reorganized last year, 8th or 9th grade, she wouldn't have had any program.
But not only that, I believe we were running one activity, or one late bus, and we were running 2 activities.
No,
Right.
she had the programs before the reorg.
but if you recall, the reorg gave 850 new, or 825 new opportunities
Right.
because of the duplication of what was just at Penndale,
Oh, I
at
see.
Penfield, and Pembroke. So we created more teams, not new sports, but
That could be
but
the
more
difference,
teams.
right?
More teams,
Because-
is what you're talking about, not the
Okay.
sports, but the teams.
Folks,
Okay.
this is absolutely out of hand.
Okay.
Absolutely out of hand. We have a resident here at the podium, and it's his floor. We're all over the place.
Thank you very much. Just a comment on payroll systems. Recently, I've worked for several years, actually, with a payroll system called Ceridian online. You do everything online, you transmit, and you can always process, if there's any mistakes made, you can always print them out yourself in a matter of seconds. My next comment, Mr. Wood, just listening to what your comment you've said tonight about this whole budget process and the way everything has been handled, I just want to make a comment that you pointed out the need for a good CPA to be the new CFO and report directly to the board for better accountability. That's what I think this board needs. And one last comment. Dry cleaning, page 130. I just see a number from dry cleaning going $2,100, $2,600,
That's correct.
$7,200, and I didn't hear anybody talk about that. Obviously, our clothes have to get cleaned, but what are we going from $2,500, $2,600 to $7,200?
We're going, for an example, when you take a basketball uniform or a football uniform that requires dry cleaning, we're going from doing basically the high school and Penndale to now doing the high school, Penndale, Pembroke, Penfield.
And then what did we do in the past?
We didn't have football as Brook and Field. And that's what the increase reflects.
Okay.
Mr. Wood, if I could also add, the band uniforms have increased as well.
I wouldn't think you'd throw the
Increased.
Okay, that's, just want an explanation.
We wash what we can wash. We run a laundry at the high school, and we wash what we can wash. Unfortunately, with some of our uniforms, we can't wash them for obvious reasons.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. O'Donnell, just to point out, the reason there's so much freewheeling right now in this budget, in a sense, it's good. And that is, we have a majority of board members that are committed to going every single line in this budget. We also have an opportunity before us that we will be hiring a chief financial officer for the board. And between now and then, you've got a concerned board that is going to hire the right person, and these categories are going to be cleaned up. This nest of spiders has built for many, many, many years, and there weren't enough people who cared to clean it up. Those assigned to clean it up oftentimes did not. They simply did not obey, and there was incompetence. On the other hand, there's categories that have been added and categories not taken away.
I see that.
So there is a lot of cleanup work to be done, and this board and the cabinet around is committed to doing that. So in one sense, I apologize to you for what, I know this is your field and what seems to be a mess, and on the other hand, we're going to clean the mess up, and we've identified.
I know you're committed. I know that. And hopefully, if you're running by an MBO, that'll be the new CFO's first priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, please? Sure, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. Dr. Bose.
Next on the agenda is Ken Weir, who will address three issues: community relations, television programming, Channel 16 services, and the big item, technology, which is the only thing that, as the board considers how it might address this issue and what it might invest, would move this budget from what is essentially a zero millage increase to whatever it might be, depending on the rate of investment in technology that we might consider. Mr. Weir.
Thank you. I was interested to hear my friend Bob Hassler in his opening remarks say that we're finding errors and duplications. We're doing that here and there, and that's part of the work that we're doing together. This is about continued refinement. Some of you have heard me say before that we welcome the opportunity to talk with you about the many responsibilities that come under a big umbrella called community services. I regret that I cannot explain every line from the past, and I cannot explain why every line from the past doesn't exactly fit with the line we have today. That will be especially difficult perhaps when we talk about secretary salaries, and more about that later. But we will make an honest effort to clean up what needs to be cleaned up. If Dennis Kelly were here, we would have some friendly banter and perhaps some not so friendly banter. I don't know. But we would talk about the discrepancies that need our attention. There are tiny page numbers down in the lower right-hand corner, and let's begin with part of the packet for tonight, which we have page number 1. On this page, we begin to talk about the kinds of things we do in the community services offices with and for others. Many departments come to us and ask for help and ask for special projects. Some of those things were planned. Many of them were specifically budgeted for, specifically planned for, and others come up during the course of the year. I won't read all of this to you. You begin by seeing that we get involved in the preparation of Goal 1 exams, final exams, and planned course guides. We're involved in the preparation and printing of report cards. This requires typesetting, either in-house typesetting or typesetting in the community. It requires the preparation of mechanicals, layout, the preparation of materials prior to the actual printing process. Some of you will remember there was a time when we had 3 desktop publishers, originally called word processors, in the Community Services Office. Those positions were eliminated one by one, and you were recently good enough to hire a new desktop publisher for our office. So we have 1 new employee, and we formerly had 3 employees. So you can see that we either send a little bit of work out into the commercial community or more work into the commercial community, depending upon the number of desktop publishers and the proficiency of that individual we just hired. And the person we hired is excellent, and we're looking forward to keeping much more in-house, which was our goal, and spending fewer dollars in the commercial community. Moving from the typesetting and the preparation of mechanicals into the elementary and secondary sections, you see that we are involved in printing of various kinds of materials for the 13 elementary schools and for the 4 secondary schools. For those who are watching this program on television and don't have the benefit of the packet in hand, the numbers for each of those have stayed consistent, and we have not asked for any increase. Be assured, if we can find that we can tweak these or tighten these some more based upon actual costs for this year and further scrutiny, we will continue to do that until the very last minute, which indeed could be mid-June. Turning then to page 2, we're continuing and moving into special ed forms and printing for special ed activities. Also, no increase projected for next year. Some printing for Human Resources Department, no increase projected. And then we get into the difficult discussion regarding the newsletter, the preparation of the newsletter, the postage for the newsletter, and the printing of the newsletter. And that was a little swamp we got into the last time we were together. And we got through that, but there's more to be said on the topic. I think there was always postage assigned to the superintendent's account. In fact, Mr. Wood will probably talk later this evening about the fact that traditionally we assigned in this building postage to 3 departments. The financial director took the amount of postage that was required for the year, divided it between the superintendent's office, the community services office, and the business office. That was the way postage was handled. It's my understanding that the members of the board concerned for our financial circumstances have asked that postage be divided among all departments. Indeed, we have been asking that postage be divided among all departments too. And so we will see some of that tonight. You will see on this sheet there's an attempt at an explanation that the discussion last year was the possibility of 6 newsletters. The planning and the budgeting was for the possibility of 6 newsletters. You have seen 2 to date. This newsletter is mailed to approximately 43,000 homes in the school district, postal patrons, 43,000 postal patrons. You will see that we're recommending 4 issues. Surely it could be decided that we need 6 issues. You know it's very common for school districts to have a monthly newsletter during the school year. I believe Dr. Bose came from a district where there was a monthly newsletter during the school year. Very fine newsletter. I've seen samples of the newsletters from his former school district, and they're quality products. We're talking about 4 issues, and certainly we would accept the assignment to do more. So the figures here are an attempt to explain the cost of a newsletter, which you can see we're estimating to be $8,000 for 4 issues, or $32,000. And that's preparation, that's printing, that's the mail house service that bundles them per postal route and distributes and takes them to the post office, and that's the postage for those various services. Next, you see stationery listed for all 17 schools and the Educational Service Center. I've explained to board members in the past that we order stationery every summer for all schools and for all offices. That's centrally done. That's gang printing to get the most efficiency. And we print so that we don't need to reorder during the year when all goes well and we've estimated our needs appropriately. Because of a lack of storage space, we do reorder during the year for the Educational Service Center, but we do not order during the year for schools. We haven't needed to, I should say. You then see listed volunteer expenses. You know we have each spring we have a recognition luncheon for volunteers who are observing their 5-year anniversary. We do not invite all volunteers. We could not invite all volunteers because you know we have approximately 900 volunteers working in our 17 schools each week on a regular schedule. So we do invite people on their 5-year service anniversary, and the attendance would perhaps be approximately 90 people, 100 people. I'm estimating that would be the case. Those accounts do not show any increase projected for next year, and when we go through the discussion regarding the newsletter, that shows a decrease over what was budgeted last year. If you follow then on page 3, we'll move into that department we call community education, different from community services, but part of community services. Community education is a program by which we offer activities, classes to the community who enroll for a fee. It is expected that the fee will cover the expenses that we charge to the program. It pays for any teachers, any instructors, any chaperones we hire, for those people who sign up for trips and tours on weekends and evenings. And you know we do have a tradition for providing trips and tours. It pays for those buses and those admissions. And that's a service that people are happy to buy from our community education program. I think most of you understand that the community aquatic program, the North Penn High School or North Penn Community Aquatic Program, is under the umbrella of community education. The gymnastics program is under that same umbrella. And so we take in a considerable amount of registration money in the course of a year, and we operate a small business which is supposed to always make a small profit. The intent is not to make a large profit. When we make a profit, that profit goes to the general fund and is part of the year-end general fund. If we were to have a small deficit, I would explain that we made a big profit in the prior year, and you should keep that in mind.
I thought you were going to say take it out of your own pocket.
If I'm completely candid with you, as you would expect me to be, we have had some difficulties over the years regarding deposits that were made and credited to the fiscal year past versus the fiscal year future. If you think about the many activities that we have in the summer program, you will understand what I mean. We can place a deposit for deposit in the closing fiscal year and find out that it didn't show up until 15 or 20 days into the new fiscal year. And that creates difficulties and interesting conversations, and sometimes it's hard to prove that you did make a profit that year. But
They are deposited.
they are deposited, and we have our deposit slips, and we know the date on the deposit slips.
Just checking.
Okay. As you can understand, we have costs for publishing the tabloid that we distribute twice a year. There was a day in the distant past where we had a summer program. That was a third tabloid. I look for... Pardon?
Tabloid.
Tabloid? Small...
It's next to the store at the grocery store.
I was going to
It's
say,
there.
is this
Just
a new
look.
edition?
I'm not talking about the other Inquirer or the Star. I'm referring to the community ed tabloid that's printed at the Reporter. We're very happy that we can use that local printer and have it printed at the Reporter. And that has been our tradition for many, many years. And we look forward to the day when we can have a comprehensive summer program, and that would again necessitate a third tabloid. We would especially welcome the opportunity to publish a third tabloid if it became an umbrella for the various park and recreation groups of the various municipalities. And I think those conversations will be interesting because I know that municipal officials and park and recreation officials are interested in talking about the possibility of sharing publicity for those programs and working together in a collaborative way. Obviously, each page has a price, and if each program pays the price for that page and shares in the cost of the preparation and the postage, that helps to bring the community together and make everyone aware of the variety of programs there. So we look forward to a summer program that warrants a full newspaper publication. Some call it a tabloid. We do the GED testing, you know, and that requires that we do all the scanning of the GED tests. I mentioned earlier that we have all the trips on buses, which creates a lot of in and out money. We have minor repairs to materials. We're sometimes asked to repair things in the high school where most of our classes are. We have some equipment for the aquatic program, for the gymnastics program. We recently paid for resurfacing the diving board and split the cost of resurfacing the diving board at the high school pool with the North Penn Aquatic Club. And that was something that we were pleased to be able to do from our account. And therefore, the taxpayers did not need to pay for that cost. Obviously, there's postage related to the mailings that we have. And moving on to page 4, you'll note that we have a telephone in the aquatics office at the high school because of the volume of calls and the nature of the calls that are best answered there. And the charges that are listed for that phone are listed here, $300 annual approximate. We do some advertising. That varies from year to year depending upon program. We try not to buy a lot of newspaper advertising. We count on the flyers that we distribute in schools, and we count on the newspaper that we mail to the community at large. The printing of that newspaper is listed. We have supplies for the summer music program, for our golf classes, for our aquatic supplies, a variety of materials that are needed for classes. Some of you might be surprised that we don't sell more books. We do sell GED books to many students who come wanting to participate in preparation classes. Most of the activities and classes that we offer do not require the purchase of a book, so that's a relatively small amount. Some of you have heard me explain before that some of our estimates for community ed income are on the high side because we're never sure how much enrollment we're going to have, how many additional classes, how many additional sections we need to add, and how many teachers we need to hire. When all the numbers are right, even without the Excel sheets, when all the numbers are right, the revenue should equal the expenditures. And we should not be spending more than the revenue. There's a small difference between the revenue on page R4 and the expenditures here. And that small difference needs to be corrected. It's less than $1,000, but it needs to be corrected. They should be the same number, and they must be for the final budget. On page 5, we begin to look at community services. In the community services budget, we have 80% of Gail Tatum's salary. The other 20% of Gail Tatum's salary is in the community ed program budget. We have technical services related to the calendar, some photography, some mail house services, requests for signage in this building and throughout the district, which we're happy to provide. We're not asking for any increase in the budget there. If you were to look at page 81 in your budget book, you would see that we're presently listed for, I believe, $18,000 worth of postage. Is that correct, Mr. Wood? You're going to review that later with us?
Yeah.
We're asking that that be reduced to $10,000. That's an unwieldy...
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Weir, you're budgeted for 0 in that category.
And we're adding $10,000.
We're recommending $10,000.
Very well. We're glad to accept $10,000. I don't have your report in front of me, but I knew we were talking about changes there earlier today. We should not have been listed for 0 and we don't want to be listed for $18,000, but we're happy to accept the assignment of $10,000 worth of postage as our fair division for the building. Some limited advertising for community services. Printing is primarily the calendar, forms, back-to-school news, and all the things that we're obliged to print for all the different departments and schools of the district during the year. Many people are interested in the cost of printing the calendar. I believe that was approximately $7,000. In the most recent competitive bidding, we always bid the calendar and, of course, award that bid to the low bidder. We're fortunate that we have several quality printers in the community, and we're able to give the award to the low bid printer, knowing that we'll always get a quality job because of the various quality printers participating in the bidding. District-wide supplies are not supplies for community ed or community services, excuse me, but rather a division of the supplies for this building. Once again, this has been one of the peculiar things about the way our budget has been developed. Traditionally, 3 offices were each assigned 1/3 of the supplies. Mr. Mosey asked me in an earlier meeting, what kinds of things are we talking about? And I guess after stumbling and mumbling, I said, these are the kinds of things we would go to Staples and buy. This would be some rubber bands that were needed, or some do-a-tank folders that were needed, or some staplers that were needed. All kinds of supplies, whether they were from the annual bid list or whether they were the kinds of things that were needed as the year progressed. Looking then on page 6, we have some newspaper subscriptions and newsletter subscriptions which are shared with other departments and which are ordered for the district. Some of the newsletters that we purchase are circulated among cabinet members or among special interest groups in the district. And we have the opportunity to buy books, to buy newspaper subscriptions, newsletter subscriptions. That amount of $1,200 should be sufficient, and that's not an increase request for next year. 75% of my salary is assigned here, and 25% of my salary is assigned as school board secretary to the board services page. You will recall that last year there was some double budgeting there, which added to confusion and interesting conversations, and one wondered whether we were really being paid more than was being discussed publicly, because this percentage was not appropriately published in the budget last year.
It should be noted that Mrs. Scher found that, and she was correct. It was a duplication. It was corrected at that time. Or so we were told it was.
Believe me, that money was transferred.
Okay.
It was transferred to the budget.
Money was taken away, but it was still incorrect in the book,
But it should be
Right.
Montana.
Yes, you were correct. It was incorrect.
I don't know about Montana. You lost me there.
Oh, we don't know where it got deposited. Inside joke.
I didn't get it.
You do. Yes, you do. You're studying not to. Go ahead.
I haven't been to Montana for a long time.
Ken, she's board president, just laugh when she says something.
Try not to name names. Go ahead.
The desktop publisher's salary is listed here, and I referred to this young man that we recently hired earlier. Moving on to page 7, you know we're also responsible for the television effort here, which we call Channel 16. And we provide television for the 7 municipalities, most of them being Adelphia, but the Hatfield Township and Hatfield Borough residents have the suburban cable channel. And we provide that by sending cassettes to Doylestown. We don't have a direct feed for suburban. We must deliver cassettes to a Doylestown location. So regarding television, we began the television operation several years ago with one young man who was willing to work a 90-hour week or a 100-hour week or an 80-hour week, and he worked the equivalent of 2 jobs or 2 shifts. We told him he was setting up an expectation that we couldn't continue. We told him he was setting up an expectation that no one would be able to maintain. But his girlfriend was in Atlanta, and he didn't like spending time in bars, and he lived at home with his mom, and
It's all life
he liked to spend time here making television.
Bars.
Pardon?
Bars. I'm sorry, that went over my head.
He gave us.
He missed his girlfriend in Atlanta, and he was tired of hanging out in bars?
He didn't want to hang out.
Maybe we shouldn't go there.
Thank you, Aaron.
I was gonna say, Ken, where are we headed here? Poor Bob.
I was going to say, well, then why didn't we just go
Reporter
home?
clarified for us. Thank you.
What'd you say?
You had no life.
I think we should move
This young man set up expectations for all of us that are hard to continue. You know that he left us, and we are working the person who took this job an extraordinary number of hours with no overtime pay. This has been done without complaint. The expectations have been met. But I think if we're going to provide the quality of service, and if we're going to expand and develop this into a real, viable local station of community service, to interpret the work of the board, to interpret the educational programs of the to the community, I think we seriously need to consider adding a second person. It will be my request to this board, my urging to this board, that you give this very serious consideration. I understand that I make that request in an atmosphere where there is an uneasiness about adding additional staff, and I don't do this casually or without a lot of thought for your concerns as well as the interests of our television effort. We would be budgeting $35,000 for a second person, and that is included in addition to the present budget for the person we now have. Sometimes we need emergency help, since essentially we're a one-person operation. Our students are volunteers, and we thank our student camera people and those who are working in the back room at the control panel. And we thank our student volunteers because our students are not paid to be with us on television efforts. This is a kind of career study effort for them, a kind of community service effort, and we're certainly appreciative of all those students who could perhaps be working at the mall or at a fast food store, but are here volunteering for us instead.
Which is a perfect segue to find out how much time do we have left on the camera before we switch to tape?
About 15 minutes.
Do you need change now?
You'd like to change now?
There we go. We knew
Well,
that.
let him wrap up.
We knew that.
Let him wrap up.
Sure. 5-minute break. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to return back to Ken Weir, who's going over his portion of the budget under North Penn Television. I was able to catch some words with various board members on the on matters of length of meeting for this evening. This is a budget meeting. We generally keep them at 10 o'clock, but it's also a committee meeting. In talking with David Whites and members of his technology committee, we're going to finish up with Mr. Weir, and when we get to the area of technology, a committee report will be made on committee meetings to date, where that committee is at, and the portion of the budget for technology is to be held, Mr. Weir, and recycled into our next meeting date. But an update on what committee work has been done will be made. Questions and details relating to technology will be held then until the time of the scheduling of the report.
So the portion of this
Of your budget.
evening that was designated for Mr. Nyman
Correct.
will be saved for another date?
Correct. Because
Okay.
we have all the questions to go through, all
Very
line to
well.
line on your budget areas. We'd be unnecessarily
Night, Lou.
keeping Mr. Nyman, and I don't think technology is something that we handle and treat at 12 o'clock at night.
Very well. Thank you, Lou.
Thank
We'll
you for
invite you
your
back
concern.
another time.
Absolutely. I realize you have two
Thank you.
children at home and a babysitter.
Thank you.
Think it is a night out.
Whoopee whoop whoop.
Go to a bar.
When we took our break to change the tape and the video cameras, we were about to talk about repairs and maintenance for the television department. Note that the page number should not be 35. Those of you here with a packet in hand, it should be page 55. We apologize for that error. Page 55, not page 35. We're talking about maintenance and repair, budgeting $6,000. We only budgeted $3,000 last year. We feel that a $6,000 figure is more appropriate. We don't like to see a 100% increase, but we feel that's a necessary expenditure that we're happy to look at again. Mileage is for trips between schools and personal vehicles. Supplies, primarily bulbs, cables, microphones, videotape cassettes. That represents an $8,000 expenditure and represents a 60% change because only $5,000 was budgeted last year. Books and periodicals are appropriate trade journals and subscriptions used by our television specialist and available for the students who work in career study with her. On page 8, we're talking about new equipment to include 2 teleprompters. We've never had a teleprompter. We want to do a better job with district news, student news programs, and those of you who have watched our student news programs know that we have capable and talented young people, but they're reading copy that's flat in front of them, and we wish they were having training looking into a camera and reading from a teleprompter. So we have tried for a couple of years to buy a used teleprompter. We don't know how or where to buy a used teleprompter. I'm told they last forever, and used teleprompters are not readily available. And so we're going to continue to explore that possibility, but we feel a need for 2 teleprompters, and we need some cables, tripods, software connectors during the year related to that and some unrelated to that. We're also asking for 3 new broadcast decks. I won't take your time this evening to explain all the complications of needing to be in the studio over the weekend versus being able to access decks by telephone modem from home. One explanation of this ability is our TV specialist, Mary Fakish, when she gets her call at 5 or 5:15 a.m. on a bad weather morning, she can dial in from home and put on the announcement that we're opening 2 hours late. She can also dial in from home and put on an announcement that we're closed for the day. So she has a variety of stock announcements. When we've anticipated foul weather, those decks are there and in place. Similarly, if she's going to replay a board meeting, a concert, an athletic event, or any program that's scheduled during a day when she's not scheduled to be there, a weekend day or some other day if she's not scheduled to be there, which would be unusual, those decks are put in place for programming in advance. I think that's a layperson's explanation, but I think you understand what I'm talking about. We feel the need for 3 new broadcast decks to help us with our flexibility and the kind of coverage we want to be able to provide in the future. Replacement equipment, primarily we need to do something about the studio lights. You know that the television studio and the television control room, that facility was built in the early 70s. Actually, it was, the specs were written and the design was done in 69, 70, 68, 69, and the lights need to be replaced. We would like to begin doing that during the next year. They have been untouched since the school was opened in 71.
I think that's interesting that it's coming after Mr. Hill's interview after he saw himself under those lights on television.
Good lighting makes people look great. Bad lighting doesn't make people look great. And the technical talk is hot spots and dead spots, and the adjustment of the lighting is a whole science and a whole area of expertise unto itself.
What do you call all this?
On page 9, we begin to look at board services. I said earlier that 25% of my salary is listed as board secretary on board services. We budget a modest amount for the stenographer who attends your public action meetings. Most often that's Mrs. Hatfield, Dorothy Hatfield, and that's a modest amount for her hourly overtime. There are some subscriptions that are purchased either for the board or for the use of administrators and the superintendent and those of us here. I believe you all have a subscription to the American School Board Journal. If any of you don't like to receive that, you should tell me, because that's not a freebie. That's something that we buy for you.
Please cancel my subscription immediately.
Cancel your subscription immediately.
Absolutely.
Mine too.
I never knew you paid for that.
Either
Now
did
that
I.
I know, I don't want it.
This was
Very well.
the question Don asked me to research, and I don't think he understood it was a separate line item in the budget, but this answers that question regarding
will-
the subscriptions for that
I will
PSBA association.
I will poll you beyond noting that Donna and Sharice want theirs canceled. I will poll you for the future regarding the continuation of this subscription. We purchased the National School Board Policy Association manuals, and they send frequent updates, and that's a valuable resource. We have two resources for school board policy development: the PSBA, the Pennsylvania School Board Service, and the National School Board's Policy Service. And of course, it's much better to refer to other policies that have passed muster rather than just sitting and working from scratch, so we value that. The last item on page 9, I understand, is an item of great interest, the PSBA membership. You have asked me to supply you with some materials regarding the benefits of PSBA membership. You found additional materials at your place tonight. Rest assured that I am not the author of those materials. Those materials were requested from...
This is not loaded.
Those materials were requested from PSBA, and I had PSBA send them for distribution to you.
I was going to ask if
It's
you...
good to hear from him,
I'm
isn't
going to
it?
ask if
Yeah, it really
Ken
is.
printed this up.
You must have heard the going.
How long have we been here now? A year and a half?
I looked at it, and I said, yeah.
I could give you
Yeah, right.
booklets and manuals if you need more materials from PSBA, but I wanted you to know that that was not authored from my bias, but was authored from their desks at PSBA headquarters. Moving then on to page 10. On page 10, we would be looking at technology. Did I understand that we're doing anything or nothing regarding technology tonight?
We're going to hold on that. We are going to have a report
Yeah, let's
on
wait a
committee activities to date, particularly with the committee meeting with our principals. We want to hear about that. And we want to be able to go through the budgets you've already provided to
Very
us,
well.
take audience and citizens. I believe Mr. Scher wants to make some comments from finance and then a final wrap-up from Dr. Bose. But I
Okay.
think as we're heading on 10 o'clock now, by the time we get to that, it's just not fair to try and do technology and an issue that important to all of us, you know, around 11, 12 o'clock at night.
Thank you. I welcome your questions. Mrs. Tatum is in the audience. She and I will take notes, and the questions that we are not ready to answer or do not have sufficient backup tonight, we'll be prepared to respond to those by memo or in a follow-up meeting.
Okay.
So, as you like.
All right, board questions to the left this time, Mr. Moser.
I was good enough to meet with Mrs. Tatum and Mr. Weir and Mr. Hill this afternoon, so my questions were answered. Thank you.
Completely. Okay.
Completely.
Thank you, Mr. Moser. Mr. Allen.
On the item of hiring a second television specialist, will that require additional cameras and equipment so that two things can be going on at one time now? And if so, is that accounted for?
We would not need to duplicate this equipment. We do have equipment beyond what you see here, although this equipment is our best equipment and is taken back and forth to the high school studio and is kept in the high school studio. I would answer you two ways. We might need to buy an additional camera, broadcast quality camera, but we would not need a second set of equipment, no.
Okay.
We would be talking about staggered hours, so these two people weren't always both working at the same time. We would be talking about daytime work and nighttime work and weekend work, and there would be overlapping, but there would be very definite hours for each of these two people that was not a lot of overlapping.
On the community education, just as am I correct if I say that for the total number of dollars expended, we will see roughly the total number of dollars received through fees?
You should, yes.
Okay.
If all the accounting is proper and the charges, and the income are assigned to the correct year, you should. I think it's our obligation to tell you if we have difficulties in any given year, and you would have my word that we would do that.
Have we ever had in the last 3 or 4 years?
Not in the recent past, no.
I don't remember ever hearing it.
No, there were years where we made very big profit. There were years, many years ago, where there was a loss. Our profit over the years has exceeded any losses. But of course, we don't have an independent account. An interesting conversation with Mr. Mosey about the advantages and disadvantages of having an independent account. Ever since I had this responsibility, I asked the former business manager, Mr. Jacobs in the past, Mr. Kelly more recently, I asked about the legality and the possibility of having an independent account. I was always told that we could not do it. Certainly if we have a similar activity such as food service, the whole state accounting system and the traditions among Pennsylvania school districts provides for an independent account. It's a pleasure to have someone else do the work, and we don't have to worry about an independent account, but it would be very nice to be able to accumulate a cash surplus in a given year, especially if we were talking about having seed money for a future project. We have no ability to carry over any money. Any profit we make, if we make a $30,000 profit, it goes to the general fund. Now, if I got very close or a little in the red the following year, I'd be quick to remind everyone that we made a big profit the prior year. It's getting more and more difficult to make a big profit in community ed. Community ed people in other school districts talk about that on a regular basis. Some community ed programs have folded because it's almost impossible to make a big profit. There was a day when community ed programs were the only people selling disco dancing, the only people selling a certain kind of activity. Aerobics. When aerobics became popular, we were almost the only game in town selling aerobics classes. We had aerobic classes every place. Now everybody sells aerobics classes of one kind or another. So it's more and more difficult for community ed programs to make a good profit.
Mrs. Mango, my reason for mentioning that to Ken today wasn't perhaps it's something we should maybe take up with the solicitor. I think the department, since it does stand on its own, we should be able to track that, and I think it would be, good public relations to the community to see whether the program is successful or not. And based on what Mr. Weir told me today, it is a very successful program, and I think we should know that. But we never see any dollars or anything to verify that.
Well, we also have construction projects that are run, and there's a separate account for those construction projects. I don't see a problem. We can check with our solicitor.
And
But if the state requires a certain amount of reporting of this department, that we have books within our books that pull it out.
And especially since food services is broken out, I don't know why this couldn't be broken out.
The explanation to me has always been that the state accounting manual and the state accounting document requires adult education. And of course, 30 years ago, we called our efforts adult education. More recently, we've referred to this as community education, but this document requires. So the question then becomes, what activities must be accounted in this budget for adult education? And does that really, in fact, include trips and tours? Does that include Saturday morning classes for little guys? Or what kinds of activities should be there? So we can talk about that some more.
Might get the opportunity for another opinion in the future with the new hire.
Sure.
About a separate account.
Prior legal decisions were that it had to stay here. We have not asked Frank Bartle that question.
Well, we'll test the waters again. Mr. Allen, do you have any more questions?
No more questions, thank you.
Okay, Mr. White.
Just to follow on to one of Bill's questions, the person that you're recommending hiring, an additional person, qualifications would be equal with our current staff? Or are you considering some kind of an organization as far as supervisory responsibilities for one as opposed to the other?
I think there need to be a lead person. I think we need to see who is available, who is interested, and see what kind of candidates we attract for this, and then make a decision regarding a lead person. I think there should be a lead person among these two people, between these two people.
But the qualifications would be similar at this point?
We may find
technical expertise.
We may find that we have a candidate who has considerably more experience or different kind of experience. We're talking about two people managing a local station which we want to grow. We want to have regularly scheduled original programs far beyond the minimum that we've been able to do to date. And in another session, perhaps you would like to hear me talk about the kinds of programs we would like to commit to doing, but there are certainly things that we should be doing on a regular basis. We have the equipment, we have interested students, and we need some regular original programming far beyond the skeleton broadcast schedule we have.
Thank you.
Mr. Hill?
No questions. Mr. Sher? Yes, Ken. Just basically, without getting into detail on the community ed part, I noticed you've been budgeting significantly higher than your ending budgets, and I think that trend's been seen there. I'd just like to know why, when you've had a year that's perhaps $100,000 under, that you go the other way and budget $100,000 higher than the previous year. I recognize revenues are offsetting expenditures for whatever the actual turns out to be, but you are still driving the bottom line total of the budget and the size of it, and I just wondered why so optimistically.
Well, these estimates are rather ambitious. We don't know today how many activities are going to be how successful and how much we're going to need, because we add sections, we add classes, and we add activities. This is always an interesting question. These numbers clearly could be pared back. If they're pared back to the point where they're too close and they give us no flexibility to add teachers, to add sections, to add bus trips or whatever, then we would have to come to the board and talk about budget transfers, because we simply cannot overexpend any line item. We must live within that line item. So if we inflate the line item and then inflate the revenue, so long as we monitor that, it works, and that's what I was encouraged to do from the time I took over this activity. I would agree with you that these numbers could be pared back, and the revenue income anticipated could be pared back to a similar amount. And that's something that we can continue to look at, and maybe we should have that conversation again between now and the next meeting.
No, I could see leaving some margin, but when you budgeted 385 and you actually expect to see 290, then you turn around and budget 465,000. Like you say, it's extremely ambitious, and I could see leaving a margin, but it just seems like it's a little bit over-optimistic in that front.
You make a good point. I'm not sure the 290 is a good figure, but you still make a good point.
Well, maybe that estimate is no good. I don't know,
That's
from what we've been hearing here tonight. And I guess that's where I want to move to on the newsletter.
Lots of our estimates should be challenged.
Absolutely, and I that was one of the requests I've made to our board president, and I'll be speaking to later. On page 78, as we deal with the newsletter, and on page 2 of the handout that we were just looking at.
Yes.
Under the newsletter, I followed these numbers on this page of page 78, and as I see it, you have placed down what was budgeted, except I know $1,000 of the $26,500 that were in the budget was actually a separate postage item, I guess, and $25,000, if I'm reading this correctly, was the postage designated for the newsletter, correct?
I believe I follow you.
23510.
23510.
It's 25,000.
Yes.
Then you've got the next one, 23553, it says, which is a zero on last year, so I assume you had to go up to 23509 is why you have that cross-reference, correct?
Yes.
26,500. And yet on this sheet, I've got 11,000 and then in parentheses, 26,500. Wasn't as we addressed this last year, we were told that was postage for the newsletter.
I'm suggesting that that was not all newsletter postage. There was other postage there as well. It was not newsletter postage at all. I'm not remembering exactly what you were told last year, but I would believe that the postage for the superintendent last year at 26.5 included 1/3 of the postage for this building as well as the newsletter. Is that correct, Mrs. Tatum, as you understand it? That's my understanding.
That is correct.
Yes, that's 1/3 of the ESC postage plus newsletter postage in the present budget.
So what you're saying is then you're estimating that 11,000 of that 26,500 was for the newsletter?
Yes. Yes.
The way the current budget is set up, Mrs. Scher, we've gone from a 96-97 budget of 26.5 under the superintendent category to 1,000 for postage.
Right, 18.
So that'll help you understand how
Right.
this is kind of convoluted as it relates to, the interesting thing.
Well, it's right underneath at 18,000 for the newsletter.
That's right.
And that's what, as we go over to the 97 numbers, and I'm following them down, I've got different numbers here than what's in the budget again.
The 97, 98 numbers on the handout packet for tonight, which are $8,000 for type and mail house, $12,000 for printing, $12,000 for postage, or $32,000, is based upon 4 issues at $8,000 per issue for each of those 4 issues. And regardless of what the budget book presently says, we would like to adjust the budget book for the next edition to read as we see it in tonight's handout.
Well, that's what I needed to know. If I'm
Okay.
showing 51,000 here and I've got 32,000, does this
No.
mean that this would be a reduction in the budget?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, just so there wasn't
This is
other
one of-
items coming out of there, that this wasn't just
This
one of
is
those
one of
prorated-
several adjustments downward that we would be making.
Okay. Well, as you know, I placed this out on the floor at the last year's budget session. I felt that at that time, we had a figure of $50,000 for the newsletter. I don't know what the 42.8, but there was a price given to us, and it was $50,000. I really felt that that would be best served by buying 25 classroom computers. I have received the 2 copies of the newsletter, and I have been asked after the first one to wait, and that this was dealing with keeping the community informed of board business. Quite frankly, I think we've missed the mark. I don't believe the level of detail in addressing this budget brought home any new news to this community. To tell them they have an opportunity to attend board meetings is to tell them, I guess, just to mention your rights by law. And I think that it could have had much more detailed and significant information in it. My personal feeling is, as we're struggling with technology dollars, as we're struggling with the money for the books, I would like to keep this community informed, and I believe our local newspapers would help in publishing any letters or information pieces we want to go out. And if we do want to do a community update, maybe we could fine-tune it so that we can get more information out in less mailings and make the best use of the space and the mailing and the postage that's applied to these newsletters. So I would support removing this, transferring the dollars, and holding for technology or something more relevant. And that's just my feelings in having waited through this year of these communications. And 32,000, or at this point, 51,000 in the budget, or 32,000 if it stands according to the new proposal. That's my position on that. And I do have concerns on this addition for the television specialist. Again, it's for the same reason. I think we have a TV station here that many school districts would envy the opportunity for. I mean, I just know of those who, they may not know what they're getting, but the idea of having their meetings televised, having so many events televised out to the community, and it is something that does need to grow. However, I don't think we've quite perfected its effectiveness within the staff levels that we have at this time. I believe the daytime hours and activities as far as the students are concerned are rather limited. They're in classrooms. So this is the type of job that has always required a staggered schedule and a very flexible work day. And I could see adding some of this equipment, but taking this budget overall from, I think it's like an 89% increase, is a pretty significant jump for this type of portion of our curriculum program. The students, I know, do learn, but we haven't quite added our telecommunications course of studies back into the program. That may be something to look at. But investing more money here while we've got other major priorities sitting off to the side, I have a concern about. I'm going to let it go at that.
Ms. Krieger.
Okay, I'll be delicate, Ken. Okay, the first thing I guess I'd like to address in reading this, value of membership in the PSBA discussion points. Literally, this is my first communication directly from PSBA about what it is they do. I've gotten all kinds of little legislative updates, and I get sometimes 2, 3 little booklets in the mail. It has all kinds of information that, quite frankly, I just flat don't understand what it has in relevance to what it is that I do. And I find it ironic that in their own discussion points here, they tout their work in the halls of the General Assembly and how it's respected by the legislative leadership and administration officials in setting public policy. Well, quite frankly, I don't regard work in the hallways of the General Assembly in Harrisburg as really getting anything accomplished. I'm more concerned with what they're doing and being allowed to do in the committee structure at Harrisburg for local jurisdictions like our own. They claim to have a statewide advocacy role in representing the interests of local control and governance. I'd like to know if any member of this board in the tenure that you've been here has ever been approached, called, asked for your opinion on any of the statewide issues that go before the Department of Education since you've been on this board. I know I haven't. About 3 months ago, I was notified that I was appointed to be the new PSBA member. I told them to take my name off the list. Nobody even asked me if I wanted to be the member. I find it ironic that they claim to have legal assistance and involvement for boards and administrators to keep fully informed on the latest legal decisions by courts and administrative agencies that affect public schools. But yet, I'll bet my bottom dollar that Mr. Frank Bartle has not had to call on the PSBA on any help in defending this board in the recent legal things that we've been entangled with in the last year. Further, they claim to have board training and continuing in-service programs. Quite frankly, folks, the budget for board services isn't large enough to attend the in-service and the training that the PSBA offers to us. They also claim to have a PSBA AT&T program, which offers cost savings on all long-distance calls and discounts on equipment and the installation of telephone equipment. And it goes on to say that many districts have saved the equivalent of their annual dues in this one program alone. Have we looked into that program?
No, but I do need to share with you, and I think it's important to do it at this point because it could play havoc with what we're doing. Let me tell you the positive thing that we participate in with PSBA. We currently have a self-funded dental and vision insurance plan. And that plan is administered through School Claim Service, which is PSBA. And in checking today, we're currently paying to administer that plan $46,182.34. As I shopped today, because they made it abundantly clear in a conversation I had with them, no membership, no participation in School Claim Service. So to take that business elsewhere and have it managed, we are looking at $92,435. But my bigger concern...
Who is this for, Art? Who is this dental plan for?
For the entire staff. You provide...
Is the board entitled to this?
No. You provide dental insurance and vision insurance as per the collective bargaining agreement for all of your employees.
Right.
And in providing that, we opted to self-insure because it's very, very practical from a fiscal standpoint to do that. We save considerable money. But if someone has to make the judgments on every claim. And PSBA has the school claims service, and you pay them about half of what you would pay any other or any other firm to administer your program. So my only concern is if we're going to change, I don't know that we can do it by July 1. If you don't pay your dues, they're saying your history. And all I'm saying is it would appear to me, and I'm not taking a position on behalf of PSBA, I'm only taking a position on behalf of School Claims Service, the $12,000 on top of the 46 is considerably less than the $92,435.
Where is this $46,000 in our budget, Art?
It's in under dental and vision. Throughout the whole
Okay, but
budget.
this is something that comes through the PSBA, the Pennsylvania State School Boards Association. We're on the school board and we're not entitled to those benefits?
No, they administer.
They administer.
I mean, it's like.
But who are they administering it for? Doesn't the PSEA have their own kind of
administering
thing?
it for our employees. I mean, we participate in a joint bid for the IU for fuel oil, but you can't buy it at home.
I'd like to.
Well, there's some that claim they can, but I'm not even going to go there. So, I mean, I just think it's a little, I think it's
a long
convoluted.
term. If you read their information, they have established this many, many years ago. And the majority of the school districts in the Commonwealth, it's a cost saving. I haven't read what they said.
Okay, so you're saying that through their administration of this benefit, it saves us money than rather to go out to some other dental insurance claims.
The quote I got today was from Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Oh, well, why don't you just go to the Cadillac dealer? Why not start with Aetna?
It's not a case. I've stopped at the other people. I've stopped at the other people. And they want money to administer the program. You have to understand, with 1,400 plus, or how many employees do we have total now, Judy? 1,600 employees with spouse and children, all going to the dentist, the ophthalmologist, the optician. There's a heck of a lot. Somebody needs to make judgments on these claims.
I understand that, Mr. Wood, but the problem that I have is that, you know, we're providing very good benefits, and I'm not bemoaning that, except that, you know, we have like a cafeteria plan for our 1,600 employees to choose, where in the real world, in the corporate world and in the real world, when you go to work for somebody, you usually get a selection of one plan.
That's all you get here. You can only take our vision and dental through self-insurance. This board self-insures themselves. But in order to be prudent and hold down your claims, you need a claim manager. Our claim administrator or manager happens to be School Claims Service, PSBA. Every time we've shopped it, I've talked with my colleagues in the Delaware Valley, you can't do it any less expensive. And all I'm saying, fine. But if we cancel our dues, we're out of the School Claims Service, and by July 1, we have to do RFPs or something and take the lowest responsible person. In the short notice from the other night, when there was talk about not belonging to PSBA, and today, I got one quote, because there aren't a lot, I mean, reliable people to manage the fund. It's your money. You're putting money in escrow to self-insure.
But Art, you could get a quote from the other companies that provide health benefits to us, U.S. Healthcare.
And it's much more money than what we currently pay. Your self-insurance saves you money. I mean, I'll go out and quote, I'm just saying to you, between now and July 1, so that we don't lose continuity in our coverage or the ability to cover, we have a lot of work to do. And then if it comes back and it shows the kind of number, I mean, we're paying $46,000. I've had business managers in a similar sized school district say when they've shopped it, they're above $100,000. We're doing it for 46, but you have to be a member.
Are all 501 school districts, are they all members of this PSBA?
No, but the
Who are
vast
they
majority
with?
are.
Okay, could we get more information on that? I see where we're kind of trapped, but I've been here
since.
since.
But it might cost you more than your dues to change.
I don't understand why you have to have a claim service.
Without
It makes no
volun-
sense to me.
Without volunteering to be an advocate for PSBA membership, I would suggest that boards in the past, over the many years, have had similar questions, serious concerns. I vividly remember the nights that the PSBA president and executive director were summoned to a North Penn board meeting to listen to concerns from this constituency, from this membership group, and that the executive director was called upon to explain a lack of attentiveness, perhaps, services provided, and they were useful sessions that resulted in continued membership. That perhaps is something you want to consider, and maybe not. But it's
Mr.
something
Weir-
that's been done
but
here
Mr.
in the
Weir, what
past.
have they done to be attentive to us since then? My point is, you summon them and then they come, but what about, continued presence here? Continued involvement or interest? We're one of the largest school districts in the entire county. And I don't,
Just in the county, we're never-
or in the area, in the state. And I just think it's, a little ironic that they claim to do all these things, and I'm going, well, for who? Because I have certainly not seen anything demonstrated to me since I've been on the board, except for the weekly deliveries that I get and some kind of flyer about some kind of health, how to keep healthy.
Quite honestly, in light of Mr. Wood's comments, it seems like we're paying $12,000 to belong to a consortium that will manage our benefits for us and saves us $40,000 or $50,000. The price of joining a consortium, irregardless of anything else that they do, there's a $40,000 or $50,000 savings there, and it seems like well worth the price.
Well,
I think what I'd like to
and I
see-
can see that we are absolutely trapped, but the bottom line is there are a bunch of bureaucratic hacks that can't produce anything, can't win anything at Harrisburg, and the Pennsylvania State Education Association runs all over them. I get more information from local legislators who said if there was, enough people interested, you ought to get rid of the PSBA, and there should be a Southeastern Pennsylvania consortium or school boards association. That these guys are widespread, they keep a death grip on dues by using this claim service, and they take it as some sort of carte blanche approval as to who they are. Well, they're not worth anything here. We're trapped to make sure that we have employees with nice, bright, white, smiling teeth. Meanwhile, they think they're doing us a service.
Wait a minute.
Right, because they saved $50,000.
Wait a minute. I think what's in order,
Wait,
I think I have the floor.
We didn't get any figures.
Yeah, the floor was here somewhere.
It was
There is a floor.
It was
I don't
here.
know if you're saving 50. We haven't got any numbers.
Well, get some
Aren't
more
you said he
numbers.
got some quotes?
No,
Arthur said
but
he
what
talked
I'd like to
friends
know
who
is
said
of
he's
the
made
districts,
private quotes.
All right, folks. Whoa. I guess
of
this
the
is my
districts
fault.
who do not belong to PSBA, I would like to know what they do.
Yeah.
Okay, and I would like you to find a comparable school district to our size that does not belong to PSBA, if it's possible. And I would like to know what they do for claim services and what it costs them.
Teresa, it doesn't
Because I
have
think
to
using
be-
Blue Cross
doesn't
is
have to
like
be our size, because
comparing
the way
night
medical-
to day.
The way
Right.
medical benefits run is the more people you can bring into a program, the better price you should get.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be a school comparable or larger, it could be a smaller school.
You have to find one that self-insures.
Right. And I think it can be found. I'm not done
We
yet.
can go from being self-insured.
All right, Mr. Wood, you know to come back with more
We need to
information.
do a heck of a lot of work between now and July 1.
Doesn't the board think it's a simple business matter, that clearly there are philosophical differences with the leadership or the quality of services the PSA provides?
Yes.
That's clear.
Yes.
From your comments and my understanding of your history of serious questions about its effectiveness and about its representation qualities. But if this is simply a business matter where our membership saves approximately $40,000 to $50,000 in obligations that we have negotiated. We have negotiated a benefit to employees that provides vision and dental care. And certainly you could budget temporarily this amount of money for dues and direct us to then get quotes from other agencies that would provide the same service, and so you'll know for yourself whether this is fact or fiction. Then, based on that, you can dedicate that dues money to the new service, which will pick up the difference between what appears to be an economy realized through membership in PSBA for a claims service for dental and vision insurance, or put it as a further reduction of the budget because you discover that other places could not do it for less. So you have the opportunity to put your decision where the facts leads you to make the best decision. Simply buy the time in the budget to do so and maintain membership until you know, in fact, that it's worth dropping, or you would suffer a loss by dropping.
Okay. Okay, Mrs. Krieger, you have the floor. Mr. Wood, you know what has been asked or requested.
I think you already covered postage.
We recognize the trap we're in. Do you have any further questions?
Yeah, I just want to concur with Mrs. Shear on the postage in the newsletter. I agree with what she had to say. I don't really have a problem with the second specialist. However, is there a design to somehow or someday in the future, Ken, to go to live broadcast instead of tape delay?
I have never recommended live broadcast for this school board. I know that there are those of you who would be interested in live broadcast. I think there are advantages and disadvantages. I've talked about this with many people from other states and other communities where they experimented with live broadcast. This, I think, is a very serious discussion. I think that you risk people watching live, jumping in the car on a given topic, running here, joining the discussion, and to join in the fray. That may be something you welcome, that may be something you invite, but that is the best reason I know to have delayed broadcast.
Okay.
If you're enough said?
That's enough said. Thank you. No, because I've been there and I've done that. I've seen that happen. Okay, there was something about suburban cable. You said you drive the cassettes up to Doylestown, but yet John tells me he still does not.
Well, I'm just saying it's not the same as Channel 16.
No, so because we have a lot of people from Hatfield that are on suburban cable that don't know, and that there's no set program like we have with Adelphia that tells them when we're going to be on. Is there a way to
for Hatfield Borough and for Hatfield Township, we share the suburban public access channel with others. They commit to us Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I believe the commitment is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from noon till 6. I can be corrected. I believe that's the commitment.
That's all for NPSD stuff.
And that's all for North Penn. I don't know if they follow that schedule religiously or if they sometimes stray from it. We give them every feature program we make. If we film a concert, we give them the tape. Every board meeting, every special event that original films, if it's an interview show or anything, they always get it. It's their responsibility to play it. We have no control over how often they play it, over how few times they play it. I wish, and I'm sure the folks in Hatfield might wish, I don't know, I shouldn't say I'm sure, I don't know. I wish that we had a common cable company for our 7 municipalities. Yeah. When I first assumed this responsibility, I met with the different cable companies. I asked them if there was any chance of that happening. There was no interest. I met with each of the municipalities to ask if there was any chance of that happening. And there seemed to be no possibility. I don't think Suburban wants to sell its franchise to Adelphia, and I don't know that Adelphia wants to buy the Hatfields from Suburban. So it's not happening. We have to drive it there, or get it delivered there, or send it overnight express. There are times when it's driven there, that when the cassette is sent, and there's sometimes it's sent overnight express.
Well, a lot of these are actually approved. The television contracts, these cable contracts are actually approved by the municipalities.
Absolutely.
So that would be an issue for
Bring up
Hatfield
at municipal services.
to consider. Well, they actually brought it up to us about liking to see this there. Well, and it was a township supervisor. She has to recognize she may have more influence than we do over this.
We had those conversations with each of the municipalities before their contracts were renewed. In recent years, all those contracts came up for renewal, and we asked them to please consider those factors prior to renewal.
Well,
I frankly believe this situation will continue, that Suburban serves Hatfield Borough and Hatfield Township.
Okay.
Okay, any questions? More questions?
I'm just interested, Mr. Ware, if you could forward to me our current policy on North Penn Television filming general community events that take place off of school property.
There is no written policy. We have an understanding. We have a procedure. We have had discussions within the last few days about the need for a written policy. We simply can't cover all the events people would like us to cover, and I think we will need to bring to the board, a policy and/or supporting administrative regulations that give us some guidelines, that give us some parameters which we can live within. So that policy should be forthcoming.
Okay.
I've talked with...
Well, my only concern is because I've put in specific requests for certain things to be televised on Channel 16 that are going on in the schools, and I was told that that there was a procedure for that.
Yes.
And that I would be called back to told whether or not my request would be filled, and I haven't heard anything, and then I find out something else is being taped that has, it's not even going to be on, it's not even going to be on our property, and it's a community event, let's say, and, you know, I just find it a little ironic that there's an okay to do that, but yet static for a request to feature our students.
Well, I hope...
And something that they do.
I hope there was no static. We get many requests from schools to cover events.
I understand that.
Many requests. I am aware of your request.
Which I put in a long, long time
Your request
ago.
was discussed with me again yesterday, and we need to act upon that.
I talked to you yesterday?
No, Mary Fakish discussed your request with me
like,
again yesterday.
Okay.
I am aware of your request for that student activity
Okay,
at a
thank you.
particular school.
Who decides that now? Without a policy, who decides now whether or not a so-called opportunity or request for videotaping?
Mary Fakish discusses that with Gail Tatum and myself, and we make that decision.
Based on your evaluation of the event?
Based upon our best efforts to balance, provide coverage, knowing we can't meet every request, wondering whether it's a daytime event, an evening event, a Saturday event,
Well, okay, my only
and the availability of staff.
All right. Okay, my only other thing is that I remember getting something in the mail from PSBA when they told me I was a new member to pass along to the board. And I don't think that this is the accurate fee, membership and dues. They were talking about an increase for 97.98 to 14,000.
I will check on the actual amount.
Please.
PSBA invoice for the next year.
Yes.
Thank you.
Throw salt.
I'm sorry, I just threw it away because I wasn't going anywhere with it, but I do remember that.
It increases according to enrollment. As enrollment goes up, our fees go up.
Yeah.
It's tied to enrollment, that's
Right.
correct.
And that's it.
Mr. Schilling.
10 minutes.
Well, I got lots of questions. No. The salary for the specialist, does that include benefits?
No, these salaries do not include benefits.
And how do you come
In
to...
any category.
Real quickly, how do you come to a particular salary? I mean, is there something you measured against, or?
Well, I think there were several considerations when we began the television specialist program.
I mean, is this, is it comparison to the...
We were hiring a person who had essentially the same education as a beginning teacher.
Okay.
We were hiring a person for a 12-month responsibility, not a 187 or 190-day responsibility. We were hiring a person where there would be expectation for longer hours than a strict 7 or 7.5 or 8-hour work day. We knew that there would be longer hours, and so it seemed that a starting salary in the neighborhood of 33 to 35 would be an appropriate starting salary. That's comparable to our starting teachers. And of course, the work year and the work day is longer. The expectation for hours and time on the job are different.
Now, where would his benefits be found? Is it increased somewhere else in the budget under benefits then, or if this is proposed?
Aren't there benefits on the same page?
I'm looking here.
Oh, maybe on the budget sheet.
In the budget,
okay.
in the budget
Yeah, in the
book.
budget sheet
I
there
think
is.
you'll find that there are
I'm trying to-
benefits on each of the pages in the budget book, but they're not included in the salary amount.
Okay, one thing I like, Ms. Vengel, is Dr. Hassler, for instance, has here an increase over last year's 4.2%. I'd like to see that more through the different departments rather than having to go through the budget and to calculate that. Is that possible? Is that difficult? I mean, I don't want to cause
Mr. Wood,
over,
is that
percentage of the increase over last year's budget.
department?
What is it? I mean, in other words, for instance, community education, what was last year's budget in comparison? I think it's good for not only myself, but, the public to
Like
pick it up and
Dr.
see it.
Hassler did with his
Yeah, I like that. I thought that
I did
was
too.
good. And I don't have to go through it and find it and calculate it. It just makes it easier for them. Well, thank you. That's the only question I have.
Okay, on page 2, Ken, on the last year's budget was anticipated for 6 newsletters, and I believe this year we put out 2.
Yes?
We're closing in on the end of the year. Is there a
Well, unless
is there
there's,
a carryover then, since we didn't get what we wanted?
there would be. We've been talking about a third end-of-the-year issue.
Okay.
Dr. Bose has had conversations with Mrs. Tatum and myself about a third issue, an end-of-the-year issue. I would hope that the issue would have better notices than the more recent one, and we would work in that direction.
Okay, so if we're going to get 3 out of the 6, help me read my budget. How much money should be left in the budget?
Well, I
We're only
think
receiving half of what we budgeted for.
we should recalculate that for you, but there are considerable savings there.
Why add
You're
it up
going
to
to-
concerns?
You're going to have savings there for your balance. You'll find money there.
In the advertisement on page 4, the $1,500, you said that advertising is generally with student flyers and the booklet that's sent out?
Yes, but there are
Is that $1,500 for what?
there are occasions when we buy advertisements in local newspapers, that being the Montgomeryville Spirit and the Reporter. It's infrequent, but we do it
Okay.
for special events.
Now, your brochure, your program booklet goes out to every single household, 43,000?
All postal patrons, extended coverage.
Okay,
It goes-
I don't see why we would need the $1,500 paid advertising when a brochure to every single home.
It would be a special event or a special activity or circumstance between those issues. It might, in a given year, it might not be spent at all.
The calendar, you said approximately $7,000. Who's currently doing the calendar now?
Who was the most recent printer?
Yes.
I believe Nash Printing had it last time. The printers have varied between Lockman, Nash, and Picari Press, and Fagan. 4 local printers.
Is there any chance that this calendar could be done either at the VOTAC or through students?
We've heard that question frequently. Any conversations I ever had when I visited the tech school, the career center?
I had a conversation with the director. The problem is the timing, that our calendar, Ken, is when printed in the summer.
It's printed in August and mailed the 3rd week of August.
So that we have the latest information, particularly on school events that the calendar lists. That could be done at the VOTEC because there's not a comparable summer school activity with the students available to provide the labor.
They do.
We could do it, but it would not be the same up-to-date calendar that we publish.
I assume it would need to be finished before the close of the school year.
Well, they'd have to print it before the student body adjourned for the summer.
The VOTEC does its own calendar,
Yes.
and they have it for their school year somehow.
Well, the
Someone-
VOTEC is
Perhaps less
a
events.
600-member
Right.
10 through 12 school. We have 17 schools, and all I'm saying is the VOTEC could do it, yes. But our calendar
be up to date.
is up to date because they have to print it before school adjourns the first week in
Good
June.
point, Dr. Benz.
Where we're still collecting data on events that we'll publish when we go to printing in August.
I believe there was the ability to set up certain parts of it. You carry over through your springtime, your setting up of your graphics, your photos, getting ready for layout. And quite frankly, if when they're back to school, if the calendar's 2 or 3 weeks late, I just see it as such a great educational opportunity for all our students that are involved in photography, that are involved in the graphic arts, that are involved in printing. To take ownership of the calendar is just such an opportunity right there. It's not even a financial savings issue here. It's a matter of turning around one of our products and letting some student pride get behind it. And that's just some of the aspects. Even if they can pick up some of those responsibilities, we do hire a photographer. Well, why aren't we using one of our student photographers? We do hire people for the graphic layouts. Even if the printing has to happen in the summer, there has to be some aspects of this calendar that we could put some student fingerprints on and be very proud to have it in our homes because it has even more meaning to all of us.
Vicki, when it shows up a month late to people and they've missed all the events for the month of September because it didn't get there, we've lost
Bill,
1 out of the 9 months, and you have to remember the VOTEC calendar isn't filled with home and school meetings and sports events.
Yeah, but
I said even if some of it, you can't tell me that they can't be taking the photographs in the spring before. I mean, or in helping to get that ready. There are some aspects of this calendar that we're paying high-priced professionals for when we have, the students that are enrolled in those learning programs right at the high school. I don't think it has to be 100%.
The high school or the VOTEC?
Either.
And our own, we have these courses in our test curriculum.
This project could be taken away from the Community Services Office and reassigned to the high school, where the photography teachers, the art teachers, and others were responsible. I have seen such calendars. Across the country, there are such calendars that are done in the high school graphic arts department with the photography teacher and students, with the art teacher and the students doing the layout. That certainly isn't unheard of. This would not have to be in this department. It could be at the high school. You would have a very different product, and you would have a very different time schedule and different circumstances.
Ken mentioned, excuse me, Ken, please finish.
He lost his train of thought.
I'm sorry.
I'll repeat myself. I won't bother.
Well, I was about to say, you mentioned a publication that I was associated with previously. Let me tell you that we did do it in-house, but we hired a photographer. We employed our own photographer because the quality of student work is, after all, while it's good as a finished product, it's a learning process until you get good enough to produce quality finished products. We did hire additional people. We hired an industrial arts teacher, well, that's the old word, the educational technology teacher who ran the school print shop at the high school to work in the summer months to do the printing. So we added personnel cost to our effort to publish our own publication. And that was an investment the school district made because unlike North Penn, which has some major newspaper coverage, we found additional work year-round for the photographer because we supplied all the picture and text for the captions under pictures for the local weekly newspapers who were desperate for that kind of text. So the cost for doing that kind of job have to be considered, and we can certainly find for you what we believe those costs might be if we decided to go away from the calendar as we now publish it to make it more of an in-house A to Z production than it now is.
Well, Dr. Bose, don't we have a print shop at the high school now?
Yes.
And don't we have...
It's not sitting empty and idle every day.
No, but I'm saying, don't we have somebody there that works with the children to put out the night crier?
No, the night crier is printed at the Reporter.
The Reporter.
The graphic arts department at the high school is a laboratory, a learning station, a classroom. It is not a production shop. It has never been a production shop. This school district has never equipped or staffed a production in-house printing department.
And we're talking about a lot of calendars here.
All I can say
There are
is,
school districts that have an in-house printing department.
What shall
And
we,
take-
I'm sorry.
This is a bad
and
night
take
for...
pride in
I
their
think it's very
in-house
late.
printing department. We have never made that commitment.
I think John ought to speak up. He's the only one among us who's a
I was going to
professional
say,
printer.
Yeah,
Mr.
but
Pittman.
it's a big, I think it's too much of an undertaking
What I did
myself.
mention was what we had to invest in new equipment
Right.
in the high school print shop to do this. And I'm talking there something over $100,000.
Yeah.
well, I said it may not be everything, but there's got to be some aspects of that calendar that we can bring the student body into. If you're going to say the printing isn't that, well, what about the layout and what you have to do before you go to print? There has to be some aspects of that calendar that could be put together because we've got human resources inside this district doing it. We've got adults doing it when
Well,
it's
you know,
a
Vicki,
part
why
of
don't you
our
talk
program
to
of
the
studies.
graphic arts teacher or some of the students, see if they really want to take on a large undertaking as that. You're not talking, how many calendars are there? It's quite a few. How many are
But
there?
they don't,
There are
well, it's a print.
How many?
They don't sit there and...
43.
We distribute the calendar and other back-to-school information, mailing to one child in each family. It's not per child, it's per family, one child to each family. We need to print about 13,000 calendars. This is a big job. This isn't a little job. This is a big job.
No, but
But if you're designing a calendar, whether you're designing
I
plan or
understand your point, though.
still the same
I don't think there's anything wrong with the kids
The hour-
taking
I didn't
photography.
say it was.
Madam President, the hour is late.
It is late.
We could talk more. As a yearbook advisor at North Penn High School, I enjoyed working with student photographers. I really enjoyed working with student photographers. One of my best student photographers when I was yearbook advisor is the president of Discovery Channel today. He's one of our graduates that we're very proud of, among the many that we're very proud of. Another one of my student photographers is the president of a major photographic firm in Rochester, New York, who sits side by side with Eastman Kodak and has quite accomplishments under his belt in his resume. I would enjoy working with student photographers, but student photographers are students, and they don't always deliver on schedule. It's more complicated than it may seem.
Okay. I'm not so sure. I'm glad I brought that up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please, this has been a horrible, horrible meeting. Yes. Horrible. Okay, TV specialist.
What?
TV specialist. Are you finished?
I was just trying to see where we were picking up. We're going on to that
I'm trying to
category.
finish. I believe I waited out everybody. Okay? The TV specialist. I support the hiring of another specialist, only under the condition that we have the increased cable time, television time for students. I think we see plenty of adults, and then we do not see enough of it was 17 schools, enough plays, athletic events. Did we tape Grease?
No, we're not permitted to tape Grease. We have royalty concerns.
Okay, I was going to say, because that was sold out and you couldn't even buy more tickets.
We can't do that.
And I didn't know it a sellout if you were allowed to
No.
tape that. Okay.
No, we can't.
Anyway, there are student plays, there's so much that we're not getting to see. And I recognize that the only way to do it is to assist more help. And I believe that there are far more people. Mr. Sheriff, you...
I apologize.
Thank you.
I apologize.
I believe there are far, I don't even know where I'm at.
You're talking about...
There's far more people watching Channel 16 that I'm hearing from all the time than I think any other source of communication that we put out, whether it be a local paper or newsletters or whatever, that I'm almost shocked at how many people are watching television. So I believe there'd be even more people watching if they could watch their kids as opposed to watching us and other adults. So when that position comes up, I will be supporting that. Okay. And then please remove my name from the PSBA list.
American School Board Journal.
whatever they call it.
Thank you.
Audience of citizens, please. Yes, sir, Mr. O'Donnell.
The hour is late. I'll only try to take 2 minutes. If I go more than 2 minutes, say, Frank, your time is up. You talk about volunteers. You only budget $2,250. I know you're looking for every dollar you can cut, and I'm all for cutting money. But when it comes to volunteers, you have 500 volunteers, you mentioned. I volunteer.
900.
I'm sorry?
900.
Oh, 900, excuse me. You have 900 volunteers. I belong to a volunteer organization. I put in a lot of time. I used to put in a significant amount of time. Volunteers, communities survive on volunteers, school districts survive on volunteers. I know you're trying to cut every dollar here, and don't boo me out, but I really think you should do something for your volunteers. We have an annual banquet. It costs us about $8,000 or $9,000 a year. I mean, I just think you should do something more. Communities really need the volunteers. We have achievement awards, blooper awards. It brings the community together. And I think that's my opinion on that issue.
Appreciate that comment.
Another one, I'm not sure if I've missed where it's been part of the budget process or it's coming up, and I only have to take one more minute. My daughter goes to Hatfield Elementary, and in the gym they have a stage curtain. 27 years old. The school was built in 1970.
It will be replaced this summer.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
We all know it's in bad shape.
I've taken a look at it, and
That curtain and North Wales will be replaced this summer.
just look me up for my school. Thank you.
Isn't that a coincidence? Okay. Anybody else, please, in the audience? Don't be shy. Okay. Mr. Weir, thank you.
Look forward to our next
None the
meeting.
weary.
I look forward to our next meeting together.
Okay. Now, the Technology Committee has met, and the committee members are Mr. Weitz, Mr. Mosey, Mr. Hill, and Mr. Clements. So if you
Did you
gentlemen,
think I wouldn't introduce them?
just in case.
Okay.
So if you want to fill us in on where you're at with the committee and what the committee worked on today.
Short 30-minute report.
What? You meant second, right?
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Microphone, please.
I am very pleased to report that the Technology Committee, again, will repeat the names of Mr. Clemens, Mr. Hill, Mr. Mosey, and myself, are unanimously recommending that the upgrade to the district's business systems, the upgrade to the ESC's local area network, and the purchase of new computers for the ESC systems be put into this year's budget. This upgrade is part of the proposed plan that we are in the process of discussing, and therefore the committee believes it's consistent with any future direction we may adopt. And I hope this very brief report sets a positive stage for our next discussion on the technology department and additional requests for equipment.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments from other members of the committee? Mr. Mosey, Mr. Hill, you're both present.
I would just like to recommend that, and I've said this to David as well as to other members, in view of the fact that we do not have a CFO on board, that any money that we dedicate to technology, especially for this building, it be put in the budget as a separate line item. If nothing else, as a courtesy to whomever we bring on board. I think that individual ought to know what we were buying and perhaps have some input before we just go out and buy something for him.
It's fair.
Okay. Mr. Hill.
No, I think it's all been said. I think just one other comment. We did, as part of the committee meeting, there was a meeting held here with that Mr. Weir monitored that brought all of the principals together and to discuss technology and where it should go, and we're waiting for follow-up from that meeting to help us in our deliberations.
It's my understanding we'll be hearing back from the principals.
I anticipate we'll have another meeting. Essentially, it was a forum where we heard from them on the aspects of the plan that they felt were positive and also the concerns that they might have, and I do anticipate we will have another meeting with them.
It's almost necessary to have another meeting because there were just so many questions and concerns that in an hour and a half you couldn't possibly.
Well, just the comments you shared with me were excellent. Crowan or excellent. Okay, as you all well know, the budget started at 0, and as each committee or presenter brought their budgets forward, the budget continues to be peeled back by outright deductions and by errors found by either board members or cabinet members. So I know that there is a wish for this budget to continue to be peeled back even though we're at 0. It is also my understanding that any more deductions be looked at as monies for technology, that X amount yet to be determined by a full board. With that, I would turn over to Mrs. Sherr, who wanted to make some comments from Finance.
I've heard some comments here from the community. I think they certainly aren't falling on deaf ears. As we were moving into the budget process, a lot of attention was given to making the most out of our existing revenues. I think that's led us into a very positive introduction of the budget. However, I'm not sitting back and resting on these one-time revenues or just these special factors that have given us new dollars. We are taking a serious look at the spending levels of this budget. I've also had an outstanding question to the administration since March 23rd. And Dr. Bose, it was actually presented to Dennis Kelly first. He is not here, and certainly it isn't an ideal situation to be the liaison to an empty office. Basically my situation here. However, as David's talked about technology, and we've all had a concern about balancing off those revenues, I think it becomes more serious that we take a good hard look at reviewing the personnel dollars that are in this budget and resolving the questions and discrepancies that I brought forward at the beginning of this budget, and seeing if perhaps there is some truth to all this, that there may be some redundant spending in the areas as they went and juggled the contract offerings minus backing out money and then reallocating line items. And so I'm asking if I could please have a meeting with yourself, Mrs. Miller, and I think Mr. Wood would be most appropriate. And then from that meeting, perhaps then I could meet with the technology department if we can in fact come up with revenues from within these specific line items of the budget where I feel that there may be available funding without raising taxes.
You certainly can have it.
Prior to the preliminary budget.
I don't know when that's going to be yet. Do we know?
Yeah,
Have we
the
decided?
15th.
The 15th?
We're going to look for preliminary adoption.
We will have such a meeting before the 15th.
And just briefly, I don't want to go into the details of it. I'll tell you that what came to my mind is with $4 million increasing in the salary category, given all the conditions that came into this budget for personnel, such as the contract reduction and that amounting to less than $1 million, with ERI we're really around $750,000 for the bulk of our staff, our unionized staff. All other conditions that have been disclosed were 2% increases on all remaining staff, and we were told of $1.4 million for new staff. Now, to me, that should really pretty much cover all of the expense areas that would be facing us, yet there's another $1.5 million of additional dollars way and beyond that, and that seems like too much miscellaneous spending from my side of the table to be thrown throughout the budget, and I think we need to get a grip on this, and I really would appreciate it.
Well, we need to do that meeting probably first thing next week.
Board officers may want to be present.
Board officers, it should not be you and Mr. Mosey at the same time because you're a whole committee, Mr. Wood and Dr. Bose.
And David, I think either way, there will be a commitment from this board to technology. It's just my hope that perhaps we may be able to find it within the redistribution of spending within the document we have before us and without any difficult impacts on existing services.
Wonderful.
And it may very well be a situation, as we've just come into this budget, we were just found $2.5 million that were carried over that was not budgeted the year before. And this is all come after the fact.
Dr. Bose, can Mrs. Canavan get to everybody and coordinate the schedules then in light of your schedule?
For a meeting next week?
As soon as possible next week,
Certainly.
Monday, Tuesday.
Yes, because that was the one qualifier to the preliminary budget going more on schedule for May 15th, was that first, I would like to have these issues resolved one way or another, and then I'd be fine.
I think that's only appropriate.
When is our next budget meeting?
The 15th?
15th. And we will be fine tuning in between the preliminary and the final, but I'd also ask for this final budget, by the way, or the preliminary budget, that we get these control accounts, or well, actually suspense accounts that's in the back, and get the distribution according to the contract along with the personnel salaries. They have not yet been rearranged by their actual departments into the new contract, and get things appropriately designated. And the suspense account
that's
with
a work
millions
list.
and millions of dollars is
That's a work
sitting in the
list
back.
that'll be left behind after this meeting.
Still has work to do, too.
Right, but it's real difficult to evaluate the truth of a budget or the realism of it if you're being told that these aren't really the real numbers that belong there. And that's too big of a category for us to keep wandering through that way. So I appreciate that.
Dr. Bose, I want to thank you for following through with what the board's charge, the charge from Mr. Hill and myself was from the very beginning, and that was to get us to a zero budget.
Absolutely.
And you and your cabinet have done just that, and I thank you for that, and look forward to finding new technology dollars if possible.
Well, I think you should be
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.